Hello, how are we all? For the record, I wasn't going to cover this at all. And no, we aren't going to go over the whole thing. It's preposterously long for what it is. Frankly, the fact that it exists at all is preposterous. How are you feeling today? Lousy. A little better than I was this morning. I'm annoyed because I had to miss the Avalon talk. Just because I was not great. I was feeling nasty yesterday when I was talking to the girl, but... Do you know what sections you'll be covering? I know for certain that I want to cover the trans section because it's politically relevant, and I want to cover the metaphysics section because it's hilarious. Now would be a good time to insert ads. I must obey. I'm so sorry. It's not my fault. The YouTube commanded me. When are you reopening the cathedral? I am reopening the cathedral this weekend. I am not putting a link to the cathedral in a Destiny stream of all things. But, were you sick beforehand, or were you sick because of who you were speaking with? I was very sick beforehand. I got a bit of a second wind halfway through, which is why I carried it forward as long as it did. Anyone read the Vosh section? Who cares about the Vosh section? Who cares? Like, kiss already, we get it. I'm on YouTube Premium, you have no power here. Au contraire. If you're on YouTube Premium, in my analytics, I actually have a separate bar that tells me exactly how much I get from Premium. So you've already paid me. But I think you may have paid me a little bit more. In fact, I think if you're a channel member, that goes into it quite a bit. I don't know if that does anything for ads, though. Oh, cool. And Brooks is ready to roll. So, hold on to your butts. Hello, hello.
Why, hello, my friend.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's going to be the last time I'm going to be doing a little online thing for a week. We've got a company retreat next week, so I'm going to be disappeared,
Nice.
far away.
What kind of retreat? What are you doing?
Well, company was founded during COVID, so we've actually never met each other. So
Oh, I see.
we're just getting together to work.
So this could be horrible.
It's going to be great. The fun part about the people I brought together is they're all people who I've worked with at one point or another. So the only downside would be if it turns out they don't get along. But since I've worked with all of them myself, I'm fairly confident it'll be a great time in person.
Fair enough.
And we've been building for about a year now, so everyone kind of knows each other already.
I have somebody in the. You remember Sirius? He's the kid who's in prison at his college. He wants to come on to talk about the philosophy and trans stuff at some point. If you have no objections, I don't think he'll be on for very long.
No, I'd love anyone to come on and talk about any of this. I find this has actually turned out to be just more sad than anything as I've read.
I read like a tiny bit of it. In particular, I looked at like the metaphysics section, which was embarrassing. But like the whole thing is just this is a man who has just been. He's had a notebook that you can't see under his desk, and every time someone has slighted him, he has made a journal entry about it. And now he's written a novel, and this is what this man has done with his time when he hasn't been streaming for months and months and months and months and months. It's incredible. Really, it's like a dissertation. Like it's I've never seen anything like it.
Well, once upon a time, Nixon was rumored to have a enemies list, and people laughed about it because it was kind of this really cute idea that like made him a caricature. Like, obviously, no one really does that. That's something a Bond villain would do. And then it turned out he totally did keep a list, and. He had a memo of like 20 people who were considered his most serious political opponents, and it was like, Jesus Christ, like you're not supposed to. This is satire level stuff, and it's just sad.
I feel weird when I make a 20-minute video.
Just sad.
Yeah, I feel weird when I make a 20-minute video responding to another streamer. Like that feels weird. Like what am I doing? This is like a marketable book. People have even been saying like he could actually like make bank just putting this on Amazon and getting it, independently published because it's like 130 pages or something, isn't it? It's insane. Here, I'm gonna pull in Sirius. Let's hope he gets the ping. But anyways, I guess there's not really anything else to do at this juncture, but just open her up. We're not going to go over the whole thing; it's way too long.
Oh, and it's so deeply pointless.
Oh, it's the fucking worst thing I've ever seen.
There's a handful of things in here that are genuinely, I find. I mean, we'll get to the stuff where if I want to have a conversation and make a joke about.
Hello? Serious?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry about that. You called me right as I got up from my desk. I had to push back. It's okay.
You always laugh maniacally when you get up from your desk?
No. What?
I'm just bugging you.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't like that. Okay.
All right.
All right, so I'm gonna share the screen here quickly. One moment.
Yep.
Yep. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I also wasn't planning to go over this, but I felt like having somebody else there would make it a little bit more bearable.
That's the only condition under which I would
Then
bother
just
looking at this
me
thing.
putting
I glanced at some pages that people had screen capped. Like, look at this stuff. The End of All Things, written by Stephen Bonnell II. Like, I don't want to be mean or anything. I mean, I do, but the main thing is this reads like it was written by a child. Like, if it was actually like ironic and funny and actually clever, that'd be one thing. Like, if he was doing like some kind of comedy bit that was just taken a little bit too far, it was taken a little bit too seriously, I'd kind of dig that. But no, this is actually like, this is his big thing. I love this. Chapter 4, Ian, the VQ, et tu, Brute, Simulaxtony. I'm interested in that one because that's definitely going to be about people like Demon Mama.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, this person demonstrated some good tactics for making interjections in a heated conversation with somebody who's interrupting you, or was just filling the void with fluff. Therefore, if people imitate those tactics, they are clones of yourself. That's how conversation works. The really relevant parts here, though, honestly, because most of this is not like this entire the birth of Twitch politics and death. I don't care about these. Who could possibly care about these? The Chubber, the Chadwick, what the fuck? Anyways, the relevant ones are, conveniently enough, what you are actually interested in, Sirius. The trans question. He has the X question things in here quite frequently by the look of it. And then underneath character, ontology. And I don't.
Yeah, I saw a screenshot of the meta what section.
Oh, good
it
lord.
feels like he's really trying to straddle. He's like trying to straddle this line where he wants to be taken seriously, and he's titling these things very serious sounding things, but also his writing does not reflect the kind of seriousness or gravitas that he wants people to take him with. So
I mean, for me, the line that the first couple paragraphs of the section on ontology and meta what just shows he's incredibly underread and shouldn't be talking about these things. It was actually just like, again, most of this is just kind of embarrassing.
Well, that's what stuck out to me the most here is I always thought, like, despite everything, like despite like his impulsiveness on social media that's by now probably cost him thousands and thousands of dollars. Like, I thought there was somebody intelligent underneath that. Like, I got the impression from him, from his conversations from a while back, this was somebody who was like, you know, he was sort of grounded. He was sort of smart. Like, he wasn't like an academic by any means, but this was somebody who was, you know, like there was genuine intelligence there. I read this and I'm getting the picture of like that guy in undergrad first year who thinks he's the smartest kid in the class because he read like the Wikipedia article on Nietzsche and thought it was talking to him, I suppose.
He is, and it's, you know, the underlying critique of all debate brew culture is ultimately that they're not about coming to an understanding or learning, that it is a rhetorical series of tactics and a series of systems that if you can learn to master them, you can win any argument regardless of what you're actually arguing and what you believe, because that's not really how debate works. Debate's not about coming and arriving to the truth. It's silly to think otherwise. And so to have him, again, I've never thought any of these people were especially smart, but I assumed they at least had, I don't know, some level of,
here's what I thought.
I want to learn about things.
Yeah.
And this was, again, that the sentences about ontology, I just went, oh. I mean, well, again, we should get to those. I don't want to jump ahead too much.
And here's the thing.
Things in here that are just
yeah, absolutely. Just very
maybe.
Hang on, just very quickly. Just before we get into this, lest anyone think that we're being snobby about this, it is not incumbent on even very intelligent people to have like a working understanding of things like ontology and like the state of and like of like actual philosophical work in the realm of metaphysics, yada yada yada.
Correct.
There's nothing wrong with not being familiar with that. It doesn't make you dumb or dumber or even smart, frankly, to either know or not know about those things. What's really telling about this is that in his infinite wisdom, he saw fit to actually go into it when he knows nothing about it, but to try to posture as somebody who does.
Literally thinks he knows something about it.
Yeah, that which is the problem, because there's nothing wrong with not knowing something.
Well, and he's
Yeah.
arrogant enough to actually try to explain it. It's the same critique I have of people like, for example, plastic pills. These people who have these theory channels or philosophy tube, I think would be another one that's a good example, who makes entertaining content.
Yeah.
But they're trying to explain incredibly complicated concepts that people spend literal years to try to understand.
Years.
And they believe and have the audacity to believe they can do it in a handful of paragraphs or in a 5 or 10 minute YouTube video.
Oh God.
And that arrogance, on top of believing they even grasp it when it's clear every single time they don't, this is where it's like I'm not an expert on everything. There's a million things people know better than me. There's a reason I don't talk about, for example, car parts or how to repair this or electrical engineering or structural integrity. I don't talk about those things because I don't fucking get them. Like,
What we're
get off my corner. Like, that's all I can think is like,
Yeah.
dude, this isn't your game. Stop this shit.
Well, it could be if you put in the work. What we're witnessing here, though, is essentially Destiny falling into precisely what Hawes has been lampooned for months now. It's for lack of a better word, it's LARPing. Like, he's bought his own bullshit. What I thought was that, okay, this is a person who, like, and of course, with the breadth of topics that you're dealing with and the kinds of hostility that you're dealing with, you need to sometimes be satisfied with a shallow and not particularly well verified degree of knowledge about some topic or whatever when you go into a discussion where you're expected to be able to, like, point to very fast. But then I think, okay, but when he logs off, when he turns this off and he's done streaming, there must be something, like, behind this, right? Like, when I turn off my computer, there are things that I read that are unrelated to what I'm doing on stream. I have interests in things. I have projects. This isn't all of it. But the existence of this just tells you this is all of it. Because we're talking about a man who streams for almost
years of it.
Years of it. And
How long ago did we know that he was writing this?
4 years.
4 years?
Yeah, I found a post called "The End of Things: Destiny's Manifesto" on his subreddit. It's 4 years old. I was trying to find the actual text, and I ended up going to his subreddit, and I found a post 4 years old where they talked about it. So it's at least that long.
Interesting. That's like, clearly it must have changed over that time, right? Because that was back when, you know, him and Vosh hadn't, like, gone at each other's throats yet, right? So I feel like maybe he's added and expanded the scope of this, but...
Well, he must have expanded the scope, because apparently it was called The End of Things, and now it's The End of All Things, which is one of the best tracks from the Lord of the Rings Return of the King, but I digress. Here's what we're going to do, okay? This thing's too long to go through, and I want to deal with the trans question last, because that's going to make us mad. So I want to start with the fun stuff, and I want to go over ontology.
Boy.
And before I do that, I want to refill my cider. So I'm going to open the page, and I'm going to let you guys have at it for however long it takes me to come back. Okay? Hang on, where is this?
Okay.
These aren't links. Okay, here's the trans question, and then this is above. No, it's below that. Okay. So we want to go.
I hope I'm up to snuff on this, because, like, I'm a lot more in the... God. Never mind. Don't worry about it.
Alright. Okay, I'm going to be... You can see
Almost,
this, yes?
I think
okay,
so
so...
let Brooks take the lead on this, because metaphysics is a little bit of a weak spot for me. But
I'm a political scientist, okay? It's fine. None of us here are technically, like... credentialed, maybe Brooks is, I don't know, but credentialed experts in any of these fields.
Not yet. No.
Not yet. I don't think that you have any insight whatsoever into your capacity for good until you have some well-developed insight into your capacity for evil. We're talking about ontology. And his choice of quote is Jordan Peters. Okay, fair enough. Like internet themed. Like I kind of get that. I'm gonna scroll down, and I'll be right back.
Okay.
You have a paragraph.
All right.
Enjoy.
All right.
Oh, here. Let me very quickly. The bottom here is. No, it's not. That's good. All right. Have at it. I'll be right back.
Should I read it out loud, or do we just want to read it in our heads?
Oh, I'll give it a read.
Okay.
I read philosophy fucking 7-10 hours a week for people. Why don't I just read Destiny's philosophy for everyone?
All right. Let's hear it. Let's hear it.
What? Metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that tries to study all the things that are, like space and time, universal substance, causation, etc., etc. Well, people debate what metaphysics even means, or if metaphysics is even something to be solved. We're not addressing any of those issues here, though. It's simple enough to say that metaphysics is the study of things, and ontology, more specifically, refers to how things are as they exist. If this doesn't make much sense, that's fine, because metaphysics and ontology are both dumb. And if you ask 10 philosophers to define what these encompass, you'll probably get 15 different answers. For the purposes of this document, ontological just means a sort of classification of something. So when one says ontological evil, you're saying that the very nature of a thing makes it evil, implying that there are no other actions or qualities that would allow it to escape such a qualification. For example, apologies. For example, a combustion engine car might be a category of ontology in which a thing has 4 wheels and an engine. The combustion engine car might be blue or red, it might have nice seats or no seats, it might be a convertible or a hardtop, it might move fast or slow, and it might be loud or quiet, but it is always going to be a vehicle with 4 wheels and a combustion engine.
Can I just comment on how much I hate his writing style? It's so grating and what's the word I'm looking for? It's arrogant. That's what I am.
Sophomoric. Sophomoric.
100% this isn't writing. Just so you know, 100% this isn't writing. This was dictated and typed, and then it's transcribed.
Okay.
No, I think he wrote this.
No, not a chance. No one begins writing a sentence by saying, well, people debate what metaphysics means, because that's not how it works. We do that only when we're allowed to put intonation on the word, as I did when I read it aloud. Well, people debate. That's not a sentence people write. No one writes that. Even
well, he talks like that though, right? Like you go.
Correct. That's my point.
Fuck.
That's literally my point.
Okay, but what I mean though is he may write the way he talks.
No, I talk like this. No one writes that word because that sentence doesn't work. It doesn't have a flow, even for a person who's writing it and typing it out. Because if you read it without any intonation, it is metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that tries to study all of the things that are, like space and time, universal substance, causation, etc., etc. Well, people debate what metaphysics even means. That's not how it works.
Okay.
Yeah,
Look. Let the record show. I tried, okay? I tried to defend you, Destiny. The philosophy nerds.
I don't blame them. I do this too. Like, again, I recognize it because I see how the writing works. I do this too. I use Otter AI. Often I'll say something out loud in order to make sure I'm able to get the thoughts down. But
well, here's a related but different possibility. Suppose that he at some point in his streaming career gave this description somewhere. And then he just copy and pasted it out of the transcripts. I could see that.
That's possible. I was originally with Sunday, but I think that like the very first sentence makes the most sense if it was dictated and not written out. Because I don't, especially with also with the etc. Nobody writes etc. They just put etc. once and then they're done with it.
So the reason why I'm convinced this was actually typed, I don't want to fixate on this for too long, but the reason why I'm convinced this was actually typed is because we're not talking about you or me. We're talking about a man who has streamed for 5 hours a day for the last 4 years of his life at least, I don't know exactly when he started. But this person may legitimately be most acquainted with writing that is the result of text to speech, right? Or I guess it's speech to text. Unless that's the name of the process and not
Yeah,
description.
it is. It's speech to text. It's transcription.
Yeah.
There's also the
But like
question
if you become, sorry to interrupt you, if that's what the kind of thing that you're spending most of your time on is just like reading online documents, a massive part of which will be that. I mean, maybe you actually internalize those patterns, and that's literally how you start to write. I don't know.
It's possible. Irrespective of any of that, it's obnoxious to read. That's all I'm trying
Jesus
to
Christ,
get
10 years?
here.
He's been streaming for 12 years? Oh my
Yeah,
god.
long time.
Another thing is that apparently he's a very fast typer, so he might have just typed this all out on his own, because that would have been faster than dictating it out, I think.
Have you heard him talk? No, I wouldn't. Okay, so moving on from this riveting topic of who wrote this.
Yep.
But the sentences themselves, just really quick, because like the things he's saying here are wrong. Like it's just wrong.
Yes.
And I do I have to go over why? Like Sunday, is it even worth it? Because it's like.
Well, I'll tell you what. Sirius, you said you're a little bit rusty. Can you tell us what's wrong with his characterization of the term ontological here?
No, God. Okay, what am I looking at here? We're not. More specifically, how it refers to things are as they exist.
Okay, ontology has to do with being. So
Yes.
existence as opposed to non-existence, whatever the hell these things mean. And I'm not an expert on this at all, but I know, for example, that one of the problems with this is, of course, like sort of obviously, is that even in discussing non-being, you're necessarily attributing qualities to something. You're making it definite. You're using things that are in some sense predicated on being, whatever the fuck that is, in order to describe non-being. And so you have people do weird things like Heidegger crossing out being as he writes it into his stuff. It does not mean, while it does involve categories, it does not mean just a classification of something. Now, he says for the purposes of this document, ontological just means a sort of classification of something. So when one says ontologically evil, you're saying that the very nature of a thing makes it evil, except this doesn't follow. What would follow is, so when one says ontologically evil, what you're saying is that some quality of the thing slots it into the category ontological somehow. Well, I guess it's just if ontology just means the classification, then it would just be.
Is your contention that he's getting it like the wrong way around?
No. Where... I'm saying let's throw away the word. Let's stop focusing on the meaning of the word, because he specifies a pragmatic meaning for the purposes of this document. For the purpose of this document, ontological just means a sort of classification of something. That's obviously wrong, because ontological does not mean a sort of classification of something. It refers to that which pertains to existence and being. Yeah.
Specifically, just to mention, ontology as a thing was created because the core concept of metaphysics wasn't able to also encompass the nature of being as, over time, these sort of branches of philosophy began to develop it.
Yeah. But it doesn't even logically follow from that. So when one says ontologically evil, you're saying that the very nature of a thing makes it evil. But this is additional content. When you're saying ontologically evil, all you're saying is that, by implication, because he says ontological just means a sort of classification, not ontologically, but I would infer that what this should mean, according to this usage, is that ontologically evil means that this is a classification of thing as evil. Simple as that. It's not evil embellished, it's just evil. That's the classification. So
that's what
ontologically means, classificationally speaking, if that's a word, this is evil.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, right. Okay. Yeah, because this doesn't have to do with the being of it. It has to do with how we're classifying it. Because we could set up any number of classifications for what we consider evil. Yes, and then we could slot different things into it. But that wouldn't make it like ontologically evil in the stronger sense.
No, but even in Destiny's sense, though, this doesn't follow. Like he's adding additional content to this. It's just
As someone in your chat says, what he's doing, and it's why I hate so many of these things when they're discussed, is he's doing what Twitter people do. He's utilizing the colloquial version of this as espoused on Twitter in order to make a larger point. But immediately, it's just a very dismissive and odd paragraph to go through and do that when he could just flat out say, hey, colloquially, here's what it means. And
Well,
then
he-
at that
well,
point,
exactly.
it's like, cool.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
so
yeah, we'll go with that.
yeah. So what he should do is all of this gone, and just say, for the purpose of this document, ontological. Actually, no. For the purpose of this document, ontological evil means the very nature of a thing makes it evil. That's all. And you can leave it there. And you can leave like debates about what the nature of a thing means, yada yada yada. Just all gone. Why? Because we're literally just invoking a thing that is sort of prevalent in a certain very specific type of discourse in a very specific part of the internet. And that's fine. What's really interesting about this, and I put a bunch of asterisks next to the word interesting, is that because of all of this stuff here, he legitimately thinks that when people talk about things as ontologically evil in the sense of Twitter, that is in some sense actually touching on what philosophers are talking about when they use terms like ontology. This is actually, he actually thinks that this discourse is somehow representative of what people do in the real world when they're talking about these things. Like, seriously. And it's... Shall we move on?
Yes. Thank you for picking up my slack there.
You're welcome. On the construction of evil. Who wants to read? Shall I?
Oh, please.
All right, you can read.
Oh, you wanted to read this one?
Oh, I was going to. So.
All right,
right.
take it away. I mean, the eagerness with which you're doing my work for me, for which only I am being monetarily compensated. Go ahead.
All right. So, perhaps the largest problem plaguing both online and real-life politics today is our inability to separate people from their ideas. It seems to be sufficient to identify only one or two bad ideas or statements from a person to classify the entire person as being quote-unquote ontologically evil. The natural moral follow-up to such a classification is the treatment of said person in whatever manner one deems appropriate. We can see that this treatment of an individual is troublesome for several reasons, but it becomes increasingly problematic when we use these types of classifications across an entire society. Before we dive into specific examples of that, let's build out two more concepts to illustrate how damaging these categories can be to political and social discourse. Many people over the past several decades have taken to replacing the definition of the word racism with that of the term systemic racism. Systemic racism is the notion that in order to exercise racism, a person must belong to one class on the top of some hierarchy with the ability to exercise some structural oppressive power over another person belonging to a lower class in said hierarchy. You wanted to interject something?
Hang on. Wait. Oh, I see what he's doing. Okay, no, continue. Okay, sorry. I thought he was doing something really stupid, but it's less so. Keep going.
Okay. There is nothing wrong with the concept of systemic racism, but we already have a term for it, systemic racism. There was never any reason to replace the original word racism and all it's done to lead a million conversations about, quote, whether or not black people can be racist towards white people, unquote, with people screaming back and forth at each other using different definitions of the word. Regardless, many people believe in this notion of systemic racism or other types of systemic oppression, meaning it is impossible for these people to conceive of, quote, oppressed people, unquote, being racist towards, quote, oppressor class, unquote, people, regardless of what's being said or what positions both individuals are in. One final term I'll introduce is the concept of punching up. This refers, especially in comedy, the idea of insulting or attacking a category of person that's already traditionally doing well in society. Punching up is seen as preferable to punching down because you're not capitalizing on the misery or misfortune of a person for humor, but rather mocking a person in a position of power. Now that we've laid all the pieces on the table, I'm sure we could see how we could combine them in a highly problematic way to construct an incredibly toxic environment that allows bullies and bad actors to thrive. If I can identify as an oppressed class, I can claim that you are not allowed to ever attack me for any reason, as it would be an example of you exercising your systemic oppression by punching down on me. However, since I'm part of an oppressed class, I can punch up at you and attack you infinitely. Furthermore, if I can identify one evil belief in you, or in a group you belong to, or even in a group your friends belong to, I can categorize you as ontologically evil, as an ontologically evil person, giving me carte blanche to attack you in any way possible, with you never being able to hit back. This can include attacks on your sexuality, death threats, penis/height/body shaming jokes, family attacks, etc., etc.
Okay.
All right.
So,
That...
right off the bat,
what was the point of the ontology section if this was going to be the follow-up?
because
really
what's
Oh, no,
happening
he'll get
because
there.
what's
He'll get
happening
there.
because what's happening is he's taking a tendency among people who generally avow like a non-realist or a sort of a non-committal stance towards ideas like good or evil in a strong sort of moralistic sense. Their tendency to, in a tongue-in-cheek way, refer to like this person, like of course in the background, like ultimately realizes their pragmatic reasons, but they're really bad. Like nobody says ontologically evil, and thinks that they're making a serious point. They're just pointing, double plus bad, and that's all.
Yeah. That's generally what that's generally how it's used. It's just people say, I think that this is a bad thing, or this is a bad person.
And I think Destiny gets this, because despite this, I don't think he's that dumb, really. Just hold on, Brooks. Hold on, Brooks. I knew you were gonna fucking jump in. Just chill. I think what's happened. I think what's happened is he's done something a lot of people of average intelligence do. I'm saying that for Brooks. They will recognize like these different sort of levels of seriousness that take place in real life, and then when they go to analyze the thing, they have difficulty holding it all in front of them at once, and so they go to trying to, in this amateurish way, break down the concept, and as a result of that, they take things that aren't meant to be taken seriously as things that were. And so you get this disaster where you have like a serious conversation about like how to address systemic racism in light of the fact that people will lean into the ambiguity of the common understanding of systemic racism in order to like bully around individual people, when systemic racism in the technical sense doesn't even refer to racism by people at all. It refers to the racial bias, quite literally, of systems against certain people, so that even if you have like every single person in society cleansed of all bigotry, if the processes that are biased against different groups are allowed to just run unimpeded and uninterfered with into perpetuity, the system itself is still racially biased, and so you will still see outcomes that are disparate because of past racism. And so you can refer to this as you can refer to like certain outcomes in terms of poverty or educational outcomes or health outcomes, etc., as being the products of systemic racism.
And it doesn't even need to be past racism. Like you can
but you get the idea. Sorry, Brooks, you were going to say something.
No, well, so there's two things. One is I made the statement earlier that he'd been working on this for many years. I have to be very clear. I don't watch Destiny, and I'm only familiar of him through like a handful of like fourth party videos about videos that he's referred to. I was wrong. He hasn't been. I made the mistake where I was looking for manifestos. It turns out Destiny apparently has made one about various things almost twice a year for the last 8 years, various subjects. So he writes manifestos that are almost identical to this one. I've been reading a couple, just going through, and it's basically a series of things happens that involves him, and so he records everything about it, and then basically creates sort of poisons the well with an upfront conversation, sets things in a very particular motion, goes through his reasoning and the list of things that his community helps put together through a lot of links and a lot of specifics, and then ends with a statement, blah, 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 blah. But there's a lot of manifestos. So it was not this one that I found him talking about years ago or that his community was asking about. It was another one. And there's a lot of others. So, but more, the reason I mention this is because when we talk about his reasoning in here and how he's talking about it, this is why debate bros make shitty writers, because this is what a debate person would do. This is an opening argument. This is how he talks. This is how Vosh does this too. Sunday, you've done the same thing. Like a very good debater opens up with basically doing their best to poison the well and create their argument up front. And this is what he's done. He's basically positioned ontologically evil as a thing that is about a categorization of evil that sounds like it has anything to do with the rest of the world and not just what a handful of shitheads say on Twitter, which is what it actually is. He then goes through and he says here, oh, look at how we can create and construct evil. The largest problem is we don't allow the person and to be separate from the ideas, which is a stupid thing to say. I can get into why, but like that's just a really nonsense phrase in and of itself. And then he goes into talking about systemic racism versus racism. Oh, then here's what that means. It doesn't mean that, by the way. This is not. No one has replaced the word racism with systemic racism. They're different things entirely. And the last thing he does is bring up punching up. The specific thing he's doing here is all of this is about setting the tone so that way when he does, so next thing he does is he brings up people who are talking about people around destiny being ontologically evil and punching up on them and the excuse they have for going against people who, for example, the first example he uses is someone who says that if Doe identifies as a deer, we should be able to shoot them.
Oh, it's Gammy, isn't it?
Correct. And that's it's literally the first thing. Doe, a popular trans Twitter user, explicitly calls Riley, someone she had a disagreement with in a conversation, ontologically evil, and demonstrates explicitly the toxic system we've established. That's what he says here. She's also called for mass reports against Gammy for making a deer hunting joke. So what happened here very specifically is he laid out, because again, he can't help it, he's a debater. It doesn't work in text at all. But if he was making the speech, he could be very persuasive, I guarantee it.
Can we like click on the link that says explicitly calls Riley?
No, because I have no idea where it's going to take me, and it's not.
No, I can tell you. I can tell you where it takes you. It's very, very simple. It's not awful, but the very short version is it's Doe, who's no longer on Twitter. You can't find it, and Doe says, "I have never even received a fake ass internet apology for what Riley did to me," which was a kind of a campaign of harassment.
Which by the way, just very quickly, just in case anybody is in the dark about this, Riley went on, and the reason why she's basically been off Twitter for months now and has like a zero following at this juncture. She attempted to cast Doe as a pedophile.
Yes.
Yep.
Which is like I'm sorry.
And cast Doe as a pedophile because Doe said specifically that it's okay for someone to wear open-toed shoes even if your partner has a foot fetish.
Yeah.
That's it.
And we could interrogate that forever because like Riley doesn't seem she doesn't
let's go back because what matters here is what he's done is he's constructed very particularly.
Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. I just don't want to get into the drama here. Is beyond irrelevant. None of these specific facts matter except for the fact that he is structuring them in a very particular way, and it's incredibly obvious when someone is doing it. And again, I'm going to make my argument for why this is text to speech. If you'll notice how the paragraph you just read ends, it ends with et cetera, with the exact same number of periods. Boy, that's fucking weird. I'm just saying. And it's a thing. But regardless.
With no spaces. Yeah, you're right.
Super weird, right? It's almost like someone didn't type that. But then you've got the specific response where he goes, despite making genocide jokes of her own about cis people, the genocide jokes of her own about cis people is like Doe made this really dumb I thought it was kind of a funny, but it's intended to be snarky. It is punching up idea that we could cure cis people so they're not suffering,
Oh
because
my god. Seriously? Is
it
that
was
what
a-
he...
yes, it was a
God.
joke of like saying that like trans people are based because like it was
It's clearly just an inversion of what people say about trans people.
yes,
Like,
exactly. It's exactly that. It's making the argument against them, and instead he says it's a genocidal comment. So what he's done here, and he does this continually, all the rest of his points, and he ends up going after Keffels, and Keffels sucks for a lot of reasons, but like these are just dumb things. But what he's done is he has said, and he says again, the next thing after this, using our understanding of how we can use oppressive categories to aggressively attack others, it's possible we could take an intersexual understanding of these classes and use more oppressed classes to attack other traditionally oppressed classes, even if we don't belong to either oppressed class. Remember, we only need to show that the person is doing harm to or attacking some class beneath them to prove the evilness of the actor, giving us the ability to attack them carte blanche. That's
Yeah.
that's not how that sentence works. Oh, that's not how that phrase is meant to be used.
So here's my analysis of this. Okay.
Oh, carte blanche is not. That's not the right phrasing. Oh
It's
God,
not. It's
I
not.
thought he was a
I
good
was-
talker.
I didn't even think to
Well, hang on.
point that out, but like, yeah, like,
Sorry. Finish your
Using
sentence,
it
please.
wrong.
Finish your sentence. I understand you're in prison, so it's only a matter of time.
I'm
until
actually
you're...
not in prison. I'm
He's
back
not.
at-
He's not in
back at
prison.
home.
I'm making fun of his dorm
No,
room.
I'm
His dorm
no,
room
no,
is.
I
You're out of your
escaped from
dorm.
prison.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I escaped from prison.
And you
I'm-
incriminate us by associating with us while
Yes.
you're okay.
I'm in an undisclosed location. But sorry, this has taken my train of thought off track, and I don't remember what I was going to say.
Good.
But-
It's okay. That means I get
So
to talk
the,
now.
the
Hang
last
on.
sentence, I need to finish it. This sentence, if we can prove that a gay or a black person is attacking someone of a lower financial class, for instance, we may be able to directly attack their gayness or blackness on those grounds. Now he has once again framed and poisoned the well for the rest of his discussions and the rest of the moments he's making as
I see.
Bosch makes homophobic attacks on gay men, which is not at all what's happening there, and that's not really how all of this works. But because he's defined it specifically, because he's laid these things out, this is how it reads. And it reads this way mostly to stupid people.
Well, okay, so what he's trying to do is he's trying to say that he's just turning his enemy's logic against them, kind of thing, like, because they get to label people as ontologically evil for, you know, punching down at people. That means that he can criticize them in the same way that they supposedly criticize other people. Is that like
Yeah,
more or less what
But
you're saying?
again, it's he's adding specific things in there. So the comment where he says Doe calls Riley ontologically evil, Doe doesn't.
Yeah.
Again, Doe actually has a background in a lot of really good thinkers who spend a lot of time in ontology. And
But, yeah, I was gonna say, because Doe doesn't actually believe in like objective good and evil, so it's kind
No.
of a weird thing to
Here's the
say
thing, yeah.
that it
Yeah.
also
very,
believes that
exactly my
Riley's-
point.
All right. I'm invoking my rights as the host. I'm going to make two comments quickly,
fine.
and then I'll give it back to you two, because I love not having to do my own job. It's brilliant. So two things. First of all, a quick comment on Doe.
Just be careful because you're going to get a manifesto in 6 months.
I like Doe. So just remind me to use it, because I'm terrible at that, and it's not
Yes.
intentional.
I will,
I'm just not
don't
used to it.
worry.
Thank you. So Doe is an extremely smart person who occasionally makes some extremely pretentious and aggravating posts, but they are the kind of posts nonetheless that an extremely intelligent and well-read person makes. Doe is extremely smart, and it has been... I did it! It has
Yeah,
been
you did it.
extraordinarily unfairly maligned on grounds that are Doe's smart. Okay, I am a
Doe's very smart.
I'm a
But
prick.
Doe is also, like a lot of us, dumb in a particular way. And that's just the way it works.
But
We're
you know what?
human.
You know what? Even so though, Doe is dumb in a way that I respect. Okay, Doe is like, oh, this passage is really beautiful, or this idea is really funny, and they just do it. Why? Because there's a level of honesty in that, and I appreciate that. Now, here's where I'm going with this. Destiny is doing something a lot subtler and a lot more sinister and stupid, but in a smart and therefore evil way, in my opinion.
Conniving?
Not quite. So, when he's leaning on really spurious, desperate characterizations of sentences, like, for example, despite Doe making genocide jokes of its own about cis people, he writes her, of course, we know, and Destiny knows, because he's not this stupid, that Doe is not really making genocide jokes in the sense of like a gas chamber joke or something like that. But he knows that enough people will jump in support of that usage that it doesn't matter if it fits at all. And that is able to determine what he thinks is a viable rhetorical move. Because it absolutely is. Because Destiny isn't just a streamer. He isn't just like a pathetic little man keeping a list of wrongs done to him by other Batman villains on the internet. He's somebody with a tremendous mob behind him. And what that means is, like, how do we gauge when somebody wins an argument or succeeds in this sphere? It's not really who argues better or who knows more. I mean, certainly, like, the right people can tell, and you can think to yourself as an ameliorative, like, hey, at the very least, you know, the smart people, the people who I have a reason to believe know better, they agree with me, and that can feel really good, and as well it should. But in terms of whether or not you win, well, that's whether or not you manage to convince the largest number of people, which is always going to be the lowest common denominator, which is really low, by the way, to agree with you. And people will agree with you sometimes, not because you actually argued them to your way of thinking, but just because they want to agree with you for other reasons. So it doesn't matter if Doe never made quote-unquote genocide jokes really in a serious way at all. Certainly not in any way comparable to like the deer hunting joke, which pulls from actual jokes about killing trans people that have just a touch of seriousness about them. Maybe
also
not
ripped straight from like jokes about furries, like, oh, if
yeah.
furries are animals, then why can't we hunt them down?
It's in the ballpark, but before I lose it, 'cause I'm a little bit tipsy right now. It's okay. Despite these not being equivocal, and him being smart enough and being socially intelligent enough to know that these are not equivocal, he's able to lean into playing stupid on this point, because enough people are willing to play stupid with him that there's enough power behind it that it'll still stick. He can't be touched on this. Like, you actually can't get him on this, because there will still be like 2,000 or so dipshits who will jump on you and make it appear to a disinterested onlooker who's just finding this for the first time that, oh, the average person thinks that this is obvious. I'm probably missing something if this seems obviously one-sided in the wrong direction. I'm going to assume charity in the direction of the majority in this case, as we all do, as we all should. But it's an abuse fundamentally of our goodwill by leaning onto the extremely malicious will of a large number of the worst people on this platform.
Yeah, that's one thing about Destiny's community, is that it's very organized.
It's a mob.
And
it's a mob.
It takes a very strict party line. Like, they are willing to play along with anything he does and just like play the exact same game. So, you know, even if he says something that's, you know, completely ridiculous, they will back it, and they will, you know, go onto Twitter and be like, oh, but why are you defending Doe, who's made genocide jokes about cis people? And I don't know. I think, basically, I'm agreeing. You know, I think your classification is spot on here.
Shall we move down to Keffels?
Sure.
I don't know this thing about Josie. I don't care about it. All right, so this is going to come up quite a bit, as you can see. Good God. Who wants to read?
Which thing?
Keffels 3.
I mean,
unless we're satisfied, if we want to go down to
no, I think we can skip, because again, what this is because again, to talk about the army, the DGGs, what you have is, hey, I'm putting in here is the things I'm looking for. Now go, my pretties, and get me those. And what it is immediately, in every single way, this is why these manifestos like this are garbage. All it returns is things that only literally show that in a particular way. And then the things that don't get thrown to the sides. So there may have been 10,000 examples here that ultimately got pruned down because most of them didn't actually show this. And so this seems like it's a lot, but you have to remember most of these go back 5 or 6 years. So you're talking about literally billions of tweets to find 30 examples from people who are sort of in his orbit.
Here's what I want to say very quickly before we move on. That was well said. Here's what I want to say very quickly before we move on. I dislike Keffels because she very frivolously slings out attacks on people who don't deserve it for no reason except she's just kind of like swelling with the attention that she's got at the moment. She's kind of drunk on the influence and on the attention, I suppose. And she has a very careless attitude towards her audience. Putting that aside, I wish she would just not do those things, because you know what? This laundry list of things by Keffels in his big manifesto that he's the amount of time she appears, she has left scars on this man for as far as I can ascertain, doing literally nothing except being sublimely obnoxious and claiming on no evidence to have gotten him kicked off of Twitter. And well fucking played, frankly. Because, I mean, goddamn, that worked. If she wasn't just the absolute worst, I would be singing her praises right now. So, anyways, good. It's on and on, just constantly.
Wait. Can you scroll up just a
yeah.
quick second? So I was reading something like, I think it was point 2. On this specific one, it was about death threats, and so Keffels and Vosh justify death threats being sent to Miss Blair White, with Keffels explaining why the death threats she gets are wrong, but the death threats Miss Blair White gets are righteous. The reason I want to comment on this is because I've always found the logic of, oh, you think it's right when something bad happens to X group of people, but you don't like it when it happens to you. I find that a profoundly infuriating line of reasoning that kind of just assumes, like, implicit in that is that both parties are like on some equal footing and have some equal like are deserving of equal respect. But it doesn't seem to me like he doesn't want to prove that in any way. And I think you could maybe justify that with death threats, but at the same time, like, different groups can have disparate treatment if one of those groups is like politically very destructive. And
I don't even know if it's going that far. This is one of those times I actually agree with Vosh and Keffels. There's a sentence for you, because what we're talking about is there's two people. Let's talk about Blair White and Keffels very specifically.
By the way, very quickly, two people who are getting one citation between them, which stuck out to me. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. So Blair White exists to dehumanize trans people.
Yeah.
Like, period. That is what Blair White's job is. Quite literally, paid money to dehumanize trans people and ultimately get them killed, whether through suicide, lack of care, or literally having them be attacked. This is what Blair White does.
Or just very quickly, as if it was somehow like significantly better, which, I mean, on some level, I suppose it's not as bad, but it stops mattering at a certain point, to get them socially killed, where you don't take them seriously or take their opinions seriously because they're just the crazy people that are the parodies on Saturday morning cartoons.
And ultimately, what Blair White does, the biggest thing is on a national level and on a state level, get laws passed. Like Blair White's work 100% contributes to that because she's able to be the a black Republican. That's what her job is. Now, Keffels, who is generally speaking mostly a shithead, politically exists kind of for one thing. Hey, trans people are humans and we should kind of be treated cool. Yeah, that's it. And so what you have is, hey, I'm a human. The other side is dehumanizing in the interest of death. I would say 100% death threats against Blair White are far more justified than death threats against Keffels.
Exactly. Imagine Destiny arguing that like this is the most extreme case, but it's justifiable to shoot somebody in self-defense, and it's not justifiable to shoot somebody who isn't attacking you. And the reason is because the facts about like what they're doing and who they are means that you are justified in treating them differently. And the same goes for political opponents. Like you are justified in treating political opponents differently than how you think it's okay to treat your own side. You don't need to concede this idea that both sides of the argument deserve the same level of respect or like credence given. Yeah.
Or to put it very, very simply and dumbly, Keffels and Blair White are both shitheads, but Blair White is a shithead who is doing an evil job fairly effectively, or at least was until recently. And Keffels is a shithead who is doing a very good thing very badly. Yeah. But that doesn't disqualify the first thing. Like, this is why a lot of people preface their criticisms of Keffels with, I really want to be friends with this person. I like that they've managed to get this kind of profile. I like on paper what they're trying to do. It's just really frustrating when they do it in this particular way because it makes it impossible to work with them. And that's basically it. So, yeah.
Anyway, sorry that I stopped the whole thing for that. It's just that kind of sentiment has.
You're in jail for a reason. It's okay.
And it especially comes from like liberals like Destiny, because Destiny is a self-avowed liberal, and the idea of both sides in a political squabble being owed some level of respect that I just don't think exists. You need to justify that, and he takes it as a given.
Yeah, King George lands on your island that has only been lived on by you and your people for thousands and thousands of years. As far as you're aware, no other humans have lived on this place. They butcher your people, burn down the forests, and establish a giant Walmart, and then say that as compensation for playing ball, you can choose who the head manager is, not who like decides on who like qualified, who are the qualifying like applicants or whatever. But you get to decide from a list of applicants that we determine are valid who the head manager is, and boom, you're free and equal. Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
And because I want to just respond to someone in the chat, I am justifying death threats. What you need to understand is that every action, every statement, especially by people who are major political figures, and sadly Blair White and Keffels in our hellscape are people who actually have voices. You need to understand that when you make statements, when you do things that cause other people to die, you are death threatening. Like, the whole intention of a death threat, the reason we don't like them is not because death threats are bad, but because they are intended to change how you behave with threats. They are intended to take away your agency. Literally, all that Republicans and conservatives do is do that. That is their job, is to take away your fucking agency.
Now that
is all they care about.
Yes.
And so when we talk about how people respond to people online, 100%, I will say 100%, I will say things are more justified.
Okay,
shit has a real effect, and people are dying.
Yes, very, very quickly, because I'm going to be the one who's on the ropes for this. Thank you very much for that, Brooks.
Yeah.
This is not advocating.
It's not advocating it at all. No.
So hang on.
Sorry.
Remember where you are. I can send you back. This is not advocating death threats, but the point is not to justify either the pragmatic value of sending death threats, because there's very little to them. The point, though, is that when you're weighing the ethicality of some random person sending an enraged message to somebody who is advocating something in more polite terms that has the upshot of actually destroying people's lives, very likely resulting in the deaths of a very great number of them, you weigh them with that in mind. Not with the fact that one person said you should be killed, with the other person not saying that in very polite corporate speak, saying something whose perlocutionary force is to help set in motion a chain of events that will actually kill people.
They're literally out to have people die.
Yeah.
Like Republicans, Blair White, all of that. We know this. This is what they do. This is what pro-life is. This is what conservatives do. And so I get the idea of someone being, holy shit, my life is being threatened. Someone's dehumanizing me and lashing out. I totally get that, especially on Twitter of all fucking stupid spaces. But I will tell you, lashing out against Keffels because your favorite streamer got banned? Jesus Christ.
If I get a strike from this, Brooks, I'm gonna be so fucking mad at you.
I'll find a way to make it back to you. But
yes.
Again, I'm not advocating.
Yes, you will.
I'm not advocating anything
don't just
like
blame
that.
him. I'm the one who stopped on this point and pushed it in this direction. So don't put all the blame on Brooks here.
This is all a mistake.
Again, I'm not justifying any of these things.
No, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
No,
I'm not justifying it directly. I'm justifying the fact that we're talking about people's response on Twitter and the way people react to things. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Also,
Like, it's
you know
Twitter.
things like
Look.
this, I can't actually find a link to the manifesto itself.
Here, or Brooks, you have it. Can you send it to him?
Thank you so
now.
much. Because I actually want to click off on some of these like these things.
Okay. I don't want to. It's 12:24. I don't want to go through this laundry list of every single person who's done Destiny dirty. I want to go to the trans section.
Yes.
Because
yes.
honestly, that is the most politically important section. That's going to indicate major shifts that he's actually making, and it's putting down to paper, and will also indicate major blind spots in his understanding of these problems.
Oh my god, is that the 31 trans letters from trans people about how they're the good transes?
Jesus Christ. Okay, so right off the bat, this is a mistake on multiple levels. So he titles the section the trans question. Does one of you want to open us up with why this might be ill-advised?
I mean, it's alluring to like the idea of the Jewish question, which was it now refers to a conspiracy theory, but I believe that its original usage was it was a legitimate question among like the political elite of what should be done.
hang on. Just okay, you're getting there, but very slowly. Here's the point that I'm hoping you're going to get to very fast. The Jewish question, so construed, resulted in the systematic extermination of bracketed this group of people by a state. So when we talk about it in 2022, that's the context in which we are discussing it. So when he says the trans question, what he's directly invoking is what is to be done, assuming a very large breadth for what can be done, to this category of problem. Okay?
Exactly.
So
I was getting to that point.
Yes, you were. I heard in the very last words you were saying you were. So right off the bat, we are very much invoking the question of the elimination of this category of people. That's what this phrasing.
Trans people are a problem to be solved, according to Destiny.
Which is strange for a number of reasons. Among other things, Destiny has not had, generally speaking, a political issue with trans people as a category. He has had an issue with specific trans people who are streamers who he's had frictions with, shall we say. He has then used this as a justification to extrapolate outwards to make broad statements about an entire category of human that happens, by the way, to be actively being predated upon by the American state in particular recently, but has been elsewhere for forever. It's actually incorrect to say that it's never not been the case. So I'm going to scroll down again, and I'm going to... Why is he quoting Rocky Balboa? It's not about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving. Okay. Thank you for that. I'm gonna be gone for 5 seconds. You guys take it away.
Are we gonna talk about his ban? I thought we were talking about
I
the
don't want
trans
to
stuff.
talk about his ban. Can we scroll to?
Do you want to talk about his ban?
Well, if you go down a little bit past the trans question, he goes into what he actually has stances and his stance on trans issues, which is a little bit further down. It's after the 31 excerpts.
I have to go to the bathroom. Where is it?
Is it dysphoric discourse? Is that where it starts?
No, it's where I stand.
Where
It's
I stand?
right there.
All right. Okay, there it is. I'll be right back.
All right.
The very short version. It's kind of easy because as he goes, we can just talk through it. He just up front says people claim I'm transphobic. They claim I'm this. I have a bad record, whatever it may be. And then he goes on to explicitly state, I mean, I would just say are 4 pretty decent take, well, 3 pretty good decent takes, and then one that's like, on trans issues, trans people exist. There you go. I believe gender affirming care to be the best way to treat gender dysphoria. Sure. We'll skip 3 and come back to it. I believe the decision to place minors on puberty blockers should be a decision between parents, children, and doctors. Cool. That's it. And then the third one, he says, I believe trans athletes should be able to play with gender they express through high school. And then after that, not so much. Which is like, okay, whatever. Not great. I mean, he states some perfectly fine stances, I guess. I don't really care. Does anyone give a shit? Do you give a shit? I don't even know if I care.
Yeah, I'm more interested in like, because so when I first saw the screenshots of this, the one that immediately jumped out to me was gatekeeping is good. Actually, that's what I saw immediately, and in my head, what I thought was, oh my god, what he's going to do is he's going to say, this kind of trans person is a valid kind of trans person, but all of these other kinds of trans people who I find on Twitter, they're not valid trans people, and actually they're hurting the movement. Like that's immediately where my thought process went.
And he does that. He goes on a little bit later. He says, conversations I've had and the observations I've made, it appears to me there are broadly 2 schools of thought on being trans. The first school consists of the traditional trans types, people who simply want to pass and be treated as the gender they identify and express as. These people don't want to be constantly embroiled in conflict relating to their views or constantly questioned about their trans experience by people hoping to engage them in some political discourse. They tend to use standard pronouns, acknowledge fair and reasonable arguments relating to trans issues, and oftentimes focus on dysphoria being one of the defining aspects of the trans experience, with the alleviation of their dysphoria being the utmost importance. Basically, the good trans. Like all I can think is like the good immigrant.
No,
like that.
This is literally like the gay people I respect versus gay people I don't respect me.
I live in San Francisco and I went to Pride and there were some men in hot pants. Why can't you be like the gay men in the Castro who wear polos and khakis? I don't understand. It's just a lot. It's just a lot, and I don't think, because the second paragraph he says is what's great. The second school of thought, and I am online, and I'm genuinely in what you might call a sort of I don't believe in gender place, and I'm around those people quite a bit. I don't know this group, and I love this. The second school of thought consists of trans people who seem to relish in the idea of transness. They are incredibly politically engaged, oftentimes via social media, and want to be perceived publicly as a trans person, not just as the gender they identify with. For this group of people, being trans is seen as having less to do with gender and more to do with personal expression. Dysphoria is seen as not being an important or even necessary part of being trans, and sometimes no steps are made whatsoever to socially or medically transition. This group of people often argue in favor of more esoteric concepts, such as gender as expression, neopronouns, and other more radical, less scientifically founded concepts, such as trans women having period and trans women being biological women.
Oh my god. Also, another thing that like maybe points to this being
I'm going to be
dictated.
clipped. I'm going to be clipped reading this out loud, and it's going to piss me off.
Trans women and then trans women are, one has a space and the other one doesn't. That's also maybe an indication that it was dictated and not typed out, because that's kind of a weird mistake to make, like one after the other. But I digress. Like, he has had, like, the idea that like gender is something that you can reduce down to a science in itself is, I think, like kind of the problem here. Like, why is he assuming that a social category like gender is expressible in terms of like science?
Okay, that is a good point. Let's set that aside for a second, because here's the really important point that Anyaski points out in the chat very aptly. This fucker has citations for every single time someone cites him on Twitter, but now all of a sudden, where it actually really matters, nothing.
Yeah, there is nothing here, and like, to be clear,
real
like,
quick, I want to do focus on that, because again, when we talk about what Destiny's doing and how the debate structure works, that is what you do. You have a shit ton of citations in the stuff that you can. Yeah, I'm going to prove to you right now how gravity works, that the earth is round and that water has a very specific boiling point. Also, trans people don't exist. I don't have citations for that, but now that I've shown you all these other things that are science, you'll believe this is science. Thank you much. I'm out of here. It's a good day.
And just to be clear, like, I am part of this group that he's straw manning down here, so like I can actually speak to this a little bit. Like the idea of dysphoria not being necessary is not, it's not a new or groundbreaking idea. Like, and this is the thing, is that he's putting,
this is turf shit.
Yeah, this is literally just turf shit. Like, or more accurately, what it is it's transmed shit or true scum shit. Like,
yeah.
I think that the idea of dysphoria not being necessary is not something that's like new or novel. Like, it's been a mainstay of like a lot of, like, for example, non-binary people, and like not all non-binary people experience dysphoria, and what it's often called is like the inverse of it, which is gender euphoria, where you have experiences in like being perceived as one gender, and then you kind of just feel like about that, but then you switch to something else and it feels really good to be perceived a different way, to be socially recognized as something else. And that is, to me, just as valid of a reason to be trans as having dysphoria is.
So,
I would argue anyone who has the ability to say that ontology is simply about categorization would absolutely want things to be categorized in the binary of traditional gender roles, and would be very upset at the idea that, ontology and being as things, there is some exceptional writing that makes a very strong argument that the very idea of sticking to human sexes is actually the problem. The male-female binary is the issue that we have. Which I tend to ascribe with myself.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, both of you. Hey.
Yeah, we'll shut up. We need to stop.
This is the voice of God is speaking, and you will be silent.
Yes, sir.
Jailbird.
May I have another?
Yes, you may. Bend over. So, someone in the chat is asking, does the lack of citations matter? Earlier on, when he was talking about Twitch stuff, no, it doesn't. It's perfectly fine to just be referring in general sense what people who are in the know about already. That is, there are these interactions among people on a platform where the records of these interactions are deleted daily. Like, that's fine. That's basically the only way we can talk about it. Any citations he puts up can be destroyed as quickly as he makes them. But here, when he's making a very general, very specific statement that requires an empirical basis, the second school of thought consists of trans people who seem to relish in the idea of transness. Here you need an, for example, they are incredibly politically engaged. For this group of people, being trans is seen as having less to do with gender and more to do with personal expression. Citation needed. Who the fuck are you talking about? Where did they say this? Where are you pulling this from?
You're not going to believe what his citation is. From
nothing.
What I've heard,
it's nothing. There's nothing here.
You say that, but later on, he actually has 34 letters or little things from the good transes, and he uses this as evidence of like this supposed split. And like, I'm not kidding. Like, you even scrolled past them earlier. They were in pretty small text to fit them all. But like it's kind of just insane to me.
This man,
Also, another
this man
thing
could have
I
like,
want-
this man could have written like a guide for how to succeed
Yeah.
in Twitch politics. It could have been used by good actors.
Yeah.
Like,
And another thing I just wanted to comment on is that, like, by interspersing like obviously objectionable claims with like some things that people actually do believe, like in the idea that dysphoria isn't required for being trans, or the idea that like neopronouns have a basis, like, and aren't just like attention seeking or whatever. Like, by interspersing that, he is implicitly putting them in the same level. And like, even if he had citations for like people defending the use of neopronouns, which he could find, it would still implicitly apply that idea of them being politically active, or the idea that they want to be seen as trans specifically and not as the gender that they are assigned, or not the gender that they're trying to be presented as. Like, it is very much just well poisoning to
have either of you seen on Prime the Good Omens series?
No.
No.
Sorry.
Brooks, you're the film buff. It's so good though.
I watched the first episode and I decided against it.
Dang.
Wait. You saw the first episode though, so you saw the part where,
Dude, like
Doctor.
what, 17 years ago when Prime first landed, it was out? Are we really gonna?
It's like a year
I
old.
just remember it was like the dude from Doctor Who.
Yeah, but you remember the part where he's like yelling at his plants?
Sure.
Yeah, it's like, grow better. All I'm thinking when I'm reading this is, gay better. That's all.
Well, but here's the thing, like, so Destiny. Here's a hot take
So
that
stupid.
maybe Chad will hate. Destiny is not an ally of trans people. He's not an ally. He's not an ally also, but he's not an ally. There is a
Look. He is an
thing
ally.
that does. He is absolutely the moderate that he plays, and he is a moderate on a lot of the same issues. And these are people who have existed through every civil rights discussion, and they do the same thing, the moderate liberal, and that's all this is. That's literally all this is the moderate liberal position. And so, yes, we can't say, just like Martin Luther King couldn't say that the white liberals hate black people, just like we couldn't say that the moderate liberals hated gays or whatever, pick a thing. But he goes through, and just to nail the point that he is this thing, though, he outlines very particularly about trans people with online activism, which is a little bit further down. You don't have to read it. We're not going to. He outlines 3 things that are happening here. There's 3 important reasons why Doe, Keffels, Demon Mama, Vivian, Chloe are bad and harmful to trans people. The first example he gives is the classic, it alienates the moderate trans people from the communities. So you're really, those moderate trans people who really, don't really dig what you're saying.
All
they
those
don't have a
all
home.
those moderate
I don't
trans
love when-
all those moderate trans content creators who he's having on stream constantly to promote their stuff.
And then he says this looks
Yeah.
bad publicly, and so it makes it so you can't discuss these things in polite company. It's a thing I've heard. And then the third is, my favorite, is it threatens the progress that trans people have made. Just to quote, oftentimes, like, just replace literally anything in here with like any civil rights. Oftentimes conservatives point to a slippery slope of sorts, claiming the acceptance of some entirely reasonable LGBT ideas will move us towards more radical ones. It's easy to fight against the idea of slippery slope by showing that the same train of thought that leads to idea A doesn't lead to idea B because they don't have the same foundations. So come on, let's convince those conservatives that we
So
could do.
here's
Like, it's like the most insane.
Here's okay,
bullshit,
both of you,
same
both of you.
shit.
Listen, peons, silence. The king is speaking once again. Here's a little edgy anecdote from my political development. So, as I've mentioned before, I was right wing early on. In fact, in university, and one of the ways in which I made my transition to where I am now is I started reading things and sort of doing like this sort of Cao Meng Day routine where I'm reading the materials of my enemies to learn how to destroy them, which included, by the way, the trans agenda and all that kind of thing, because that's where I came from. And one of the ways in which I wormed my way in, or attempted to very badly, because I didn't realize how badly it was, as they never do, is I would say things like, don't you want to win? The thing you're doing right now is directly feeding in to the rhetoric that your political opponents are using to push you under. And I was saying this with zero concern for the success of the people I was supposedly advising. Now, they were also shitheads for other reasons. That's beside the point. But nothing about this. This is actually concern trolling in the most blatant. I hate that term. It sounds so dumb. But this is concern trolling in the most basic way. This person is a trans ally here, in the same way that somebody is a skeleton ally in RuneScape when they're farming skeletons in Draenor Manor. Like that's what this is. Like this is the sensitive part of under the knee that you can jab a needle to provoke a twitch response, or so you think, because you think, oh, there are like people who are. And it's really sinister. There are trans activists who are really frustrated by the fact that a lot of discourses surrounding some really toxic or thoughtless or reactive behaviors from like some set of really visible people. I'm going to use that to turn those people against communities headed by people who have dissed me on Twitter.
Yeah,
and that's it. That's the upshot. That's all it's achieved. Go on.
The thing I wanted to say is that like because as you mentioned, like stuff like this is totally insincere, but because he's like kind of switching back and forth between like, oh, I am pushing back against this because I disagree with it, and I'm pushing back against this because of pragmatic reasons. And I feel like what the rhetorical strategy here is that if you push him on like, well, you know, you don't actually agree with this, like you're not being a full ally. It's like, well, no. I want what's best for trans people. I just think that it's not productive to go down these roads and rabbit holes. You know, like it's fundamentally insincere. Like this is not something that he really cares about. Okay. I don't.
Here's a little lesson in sincerity, by the way. So I've noticed JZR Jeremy in the chat throughout the night, who is calling me out, justly in his view, I am sure, for leaving the conversation with Destiny. He thinks that I was forced to because I'd run myself into a contradiction or because I was being a coward. Jeremy, you're welcome on tonight. I will evacuate the chat for however long you're here, but you are welcome. Add me on Discord. As you were, sorry. I'm in Destiny's server. You'll find me there if you search my name.
Also, another thing is that, like, you know, the concept of exotic genders and the demand for neopronouns, however, have no such scientific or psychological basis. Like, that's just not true. Like, and it depends on what you mean by scientific basis, but they absolutely have a psychological basis. You have to appeal to the mind states of the people that you're talking about, which is necessarily psychological. Like, I don't... like, the very idea of expression is the putting outward to a public what you are feeling on the inside. Like, that's necessarily psychological. He's just trying to castigate it as, like, not having any legitimate argument behind it. And it would be one thing if he addressed arguments for, like, why neopronouns are, like, a legitimate, like, exercise of gender. And, you know, he could have addressed those. I don't know that he would have good arguments against them, but he could have. But he just doesn't. He just claims that there are no arguments, that people with xenogenders just haven't thought about these kinds of things before, that there is no literature on it. And there might not, like, or at least there is nobody who's actually given this any thought. And I don't know, I find that kind of, it's a little bit insulting, but also, it's a good rhetorical strategy to just say that your opponents don't actually have any arguments and that they're just asserting it and asking you to believe it on faith. And, that also abdicates the need for a citation, because if your opponents have no arguments, and you claim that they have no arguments, then you don't have the burden to provide any arguments to respond to.
So Aiko Rules, thank you for the $5. As if you ever need to pay me to be heard, you're welcome to come on anytime you want, of course. Says Destiny is acting like this isn't just his opinion and experience. Yeah. Well, that's why we're even talking about this in the first place. It's not because God that he has any credentials such that this merits any sort of actual response. In fact, I wasn't going to cover it at all. He has a large audience, and this will be talked about. So we are kind of fucked into talking
specifically
about it.
What I think would be worth, because again, I think I don't give a shit about him and this drama or any of these people. This shit is painful. But the ending of the trans section, I think, has a handful of bits that I think is actually the brunt of his argument, where he actually goes out of his way to effectively condemn anyone who is pushing for anything more extreme than straight medical-based gender binary situations, which he supports fully, but he doesn't go outside of that. He goes so deeply. He says, blah, 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 blah. All too often, progressives make it seem as though it's required for us to throw intellectual honesty to the wind for the sake of being compassionate. Yet it is essential to realize that throwing rationality out the window is not compassion, it is cruelty. It leaves us unequipped to wrestle with both of our own thoughts and the thoughts of those that would oppose us, ultimately moving us further away from a world more inclusive for the very same trans people we're supposed to be advocating for.
Just again,
which is horrifying. It's a horrifying argument.
Yeah. What's the upshot of this argument is that, like, to be a real trans person, like, you have to have dysphoria, but you also have to be concerned with, like, fitting into traditional gender roles, right? Like, that seemed to be what he was emphasizing when he said, like, this first group of the good transes wants to pass and just be left alone, is that they want to, fit into, like, the gender roles that already exist. But, the gender roles that exist right now, they're not, like, scientific. Like, they're not found in nature. They're social. And by participating in the gender, like woman or man or anything else, and also challenging, like, the preconceptions people have about that, you can actually change what that means to people.
Fucking
and, like,
hell.
This has happened
throughout
history.
You actually, I hadn't even thought of that. That's a really obvious point, but I hadn't even thought of that. The gender roles that we, and I probably should have because we were talking about Doe earlier. The gender roles that we have, because they are by convention, not by reference to a biological necessity, we only redescribe them desperately after the fact in order to validate them later on as being downstream from biological necessity. They're definitionally inadequate to categorize us because they are only established for the pragmatic, and not even for the deliberate pragmatic, but just sort of like crystallizing over time. The pragmatic activities of people who had no self-awareness of what it was they were actually doing for the sake of some other end that they were unconsciously pursuing, like whether it's the success of or the increase of their gusto in, like, some village or ancient polis context, or quite obviously far before that, but that kind of thing. I mean, that's actually so obvious. I hadn't even thought of it in those terms, though. That's
Yeah. And I've redeemed myself.
for now.
I don't know. It just it bothers me that, like, he is treating these categories as being, like, natural, and also just his, like, position. Like, the last paragraph is, like, so condescending, but the one that Brooks read out about, like, throwing rationality, we can't throw rationality to the wind. Like, he's not even questioning like his analysis of these things, right? He's just kind of assuming that like the only justification people have is that you
The
should be
way,
compassionate.
yeah, the way people like this use the word rationality, they may as well be saying super duper. Like it has no actual content.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
yeah.
But again, when we talk about also the reality of gender being at all something that's scientific, the underneath it all, if we want to talk about actual ontology and the nature of being, nothing is. Like that's not a thing that we can do. There is no sex that is. There is some level of objects and things that sort of interact, but causation is a thing that we aren't able to actually prove significantly. There are some core mathematical problems that this arises that are serious scientific issues that are very kind of pertinent, but these things sort of teased out put us in a place where, again, anytime we say that there is actual knowledge or this is the base, anytime someone invokes logic or science, I just point them at Bruno Latour and his wonderful book, Cult of the Factus Gods, where he very much explains how the literal scientific process is not the objective thing we think it is. He wrote a wonderful book on that subject called Laboratory Life. I have a copy of it here, actually. It's quite excellent. It is so good and so specific on how science is broken that it's actually has a forward by the gentleman who came up with the polio vaccine and modern vaccinations as we know it.
Yeah.
Because they're very aware that this is actually how science works.
No, for sure. And science, like, people act like scientific anti-realism, like the idea that we're not justified in actually taking as true many of the statements that we make about the unobservable world. Like it's not like the most popular philosophical position, but it is a serious philosophical position that he's kind of just like dismissing implicitly here. Like,
Which, I mean, to be clear, in addition to that, like when he says that it's not like the most popular philosophical position, at a certain level you're being modest. A lot of philosophers are also extremely ignorant about what that means.
No, for sure. Like, just to be clear, like when I say it's not the most popular, I mean that like a lot of philosophers definitely like say that they're scientific realists.
Very quickly though, a lot of philosophers will include people like Steven Pinker. So you have to be
God,
careful.
I hate you.
Yeah.
Oh.
Look. I don't call Steven Pinker a philosopher.
I was going off of
Harvard does wherever.
I was going off of Phil Papers, the survey. So I don't know if it got sent to Steven Pinker types, but
it got sent to everybody.
Yeah, fair enough. And like, just to be clear, like I'm not saying that makes it wrong. Like I definitely, like I find scientific anti-realism, like in certain forms, to be very compelling, like as an argument. But my point is that like I didn't want to like overstate the case, like, oh, all philosophers agree. I wanted to say that like it is a serious philosophical position that you can have, that like science is not only not the basis for most knowledge, it's not the basis for like any kind of knowledge. Like Van Frossen is like an empiricist, and like the empiricist school specifically, this is because I watch a lot of King B, like the empiricist school specifically has a lot of scientific anti-realism and thinks that like you can only ever say that science is empirically adequate, not that it's true. Like, and this is to the extent of like not even believing that like electrons can be said to exist. I don't know. If we're having like legitimate arguments over the existence of like things that are taken as mainstays in like physics, like electrons or germs or whatever, like I find it hard to say that like because their xenogenders don't like have a scientific rigor behind them, that makes them, you know, automatically invalid and like not useful.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a little bit
honestly
tired,
like
but...
considering what we're reading right now, I like it when you guys go off on these tangents because it's the only interesting material that's actually at hand here. Keg Jaeger, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I think I am. Says for $20, thank you very much. It's extremely generous. If anything, this confirms Vosh's claim that Destiny operates out of spite, like he could have talked about these issues in a grounded manner, but it's clear he's using his politics to bludgeon his rivals on Twitter. Yeah, and it seems to me like the the whole idea behind even characterizing this as a manifesto in the first place, making this an event, right?
Like,
that's really what this is. It's like this is a thing. This is a thing that you will discuss. This is a boulder I'm rolling down the hill. I'm just leaving it there. But this will hurt you. Yeah.
The thing that made me realize, like, eventually what I came to the realization of is that, like, Destiny is the kind of person who wants to take the opposite position to, like, everybody in the room and argue it, and thus stand out because he's taking that alternative position.
Yeah.
And, like, I can say that with confidence because, like, I used to do that kind of thing when I was, like, in, like, middle school. Like, I would very clearly just, like, take contrarian positions just to defend them. And because people aren't really all that accustomed to arguing against, like, commonly held beliefs, you can sometimes, to a certain kind of person, look like you're being very smart.
On that point, just to cut you off very quickly, because this actually comes to bear here, especially on, like, the activities of my channel recently. People will characterize me as, in some sense, defending Vosh. I mean, the thing is farthest from the truth. If anything, I've spent way more time criticizing Vosh than I have Destiny. However, the nature of my criticisms are instructive here. When I criticize Vosh, I'm criticizing him because of a position he has that's bad. And I'm criticizing him because he says something that's wrong or undermotivated. And the two times I've spoken to him, I've criticized him both times to his face. The first time I told him, here's a list of things that you're doing that I think are destructive. And we had a back and forth about them. And the second time, I had an extensive and heated argument with him that very well could have burned that bridge, and I was prepared for that to be the case. Because I thought that he was being grossly unfair with the Professor Flowers issue. However, even if he was being stupid and pig-headed and wrong, sometimes willfully wrong, he was doing so for reasons of being arrogant or angry or defensive or cowardly, or things that I can appreciate as being downstream from real and genuinely motivated human emotions, right? Like, I get that, or as a consequence of his position. The reason why I talked to Destiny for only 8 minutes is because I have no respect for him. So as soon as he switches to, well, aren't you doing the same thing, even though he's smart enough to know that that's a meaningless diversion, because I don't have the power to give Nick Fuentes an audience. I don't. Nobody knows about me before Nick Fuentes. That's just a fact. Like, maybe like some old political science professor who hasn't used the internet in 20 years until his grandson bought him a tablet. Maybe. And they're like, ooh, Thomas Hobbes, you know? Maybe. But no, do I open the doors to bags of money for Nick Fuentes' proprietary streaming platform? No. Not at all. And he knows that. He'd be a fucking idiot to think otherwise. And we know he knows that because his justification for moving over to Cozy was the monetary value of doing so, which, as people have pointed out, doesn't exist. But that doesn't matter. That just means he's a moron. It doesn't mean he's not thinking in those terms. So
I don't think he's a moron. I mean,
I don't think he's a moron either. I think he's
I don't think he's very bright necessarily. I think he's exceptionally skilled at one specific thing.
I disagree. I think he's extremely bright. That's one of the reasons why I'm extremely, like, unforgiving of this, because he knows better. He has no excuse.
I see. I think because you're referencing, like, one of the few times I've actually watched Destiny, which is talking to you. I think what happened is, and you could almost see it, where he was responding, I think, very genially and actually having a real conversation with you. And as he realized that you had gotten one over on him by effectively having him admit that he was doing this, that there was monetary value behind it, even if he made it as a joke, he still said it and he was quite serious. The turning back on you was his emotionally reactive switch as a debater in order to balance out the scales of the conversation. He was using a rhetorical device in that moment. It's a thing that, again, these are things debaters do. This is like, it wasn't even that he's he's not evil doing it. He's not dumb doing it. It's not a mistake that he's doing. Of course he's evil doing it.
Stop right there. He's evil doing it.
I spent
2.5 hours yesterday talking to someone who declared in front of a live audience with no shame whatsoever that he publicly abused his partner and raped somebody after meeting them for 2 hours. Hang on. And the only reason I was talking to him is because Destiny made this person's platform.
Yep.
This person wouldn't matter if Destiny hadn't gone, ooh, look, a pedophile who fought with Vosh. I'm gonna boost this guy.
I see, and I don't believe evil.
Wasn't to be fair to him, wasn't his conversation with Mr. Girl before the one with Vosh?
No, it was after.
I thought it was before.
It was after. Nobody knew who Mr. Girl was until the Vosh conversation.
Okay.
But it wasn't his conversation with Mr. Girl. You went over, I think, on one of your streams. Wasn't his conversation with Mr. Girl effectively about his own non-normative sexual behaviors and being very open about that sort of, like, in Mr. Girl, he almost sees a camaraderie in the sense of like someone who is very different than himself, certainly, but that he's able to sort of talk about actually, he has non-normative sexual behaviors, doesn't he, Destiny?
It doesn't matter. The point is...
No, I mean, it absolutely does.
No.
It
doesn't matter for the simple reason, okay? We're talking about somebody who, if they make, especially if it's extremely uncontextualized and non-specified and with endless caveats, we're talking about someone who, if their behaviors and their description of their behaviors as normative... as normal things that people can feel justified doing. If these are promulgated, they can cause immense harm to, like, who knows how many people. And he gave this person
you and I
a
agree
megaphone.
on this.
Yeah.
I know you and I agree on this. But specifically with Destiny, it just occurs to me that that conversation, Destiny talked openly about some things that I would absolutely say are, to just refer back to that thing I read about how we need to talk about trans issues. The idea that it scares off how we do it scares off the squares, basically, and we've got to be careful. He candidly spoke about his own, and again, I'm not knocking his, as long as it's consensual, go have fun, my friends. But he has non-normative desires, which are decidedly terrifying to normies, for sure. That's kind of odd that he...
Oh, no, you're right. Yeah. Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, it's you can't say that.
That's throwing rocks in a glass house.
Fucking hell. Sorry, I was reacting to the negative associations with the other thing. No, you're absolutely right. Like, you can't go like Keffel's in Demon Mama. You're giving the righties rhetorical ammunition against trans people. Meanwhile, he's pulling on like the pedophile defender who claims, like, yeah, I actually raped this person. Like,
yeah, who
fucking hell
totally did, I believe. Yes.
Well, he says so. He says
he did.
He took 30 minutes to say he did, but he did. And he didn't take 30 minutes to get to that point. It took 30 minutes to say it over and over and over again.
My general belief about words is that words are the excuses we give our emotions. And it happens post facto. We assign these things, we say the things. And so it actually, when we talk about like where Destiny's reactive emotions are or how he's playing through this thing, again, I don't believe in evil. Sorry, I don't. I don't believe in ontological evil. I'm one of those weirdos.
Look, hang on. No, nobody does. We just mean double plus bad, right? This is the evil that we need to, like...
I believe he's a bad person and that he's bad at being a person. Yes.
All right. We'll settle there. We're good. I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm not. Also, just to be sorry. So, no, I hate to do this, but I actually did go look. So the first conversation.
I know. I saw in chat Destiny was first, but it doesn't matter because most people only knew about him after the Vosh thing, and at that point he had enough reason, and he's had enough reason since then. So yeah, you're right. Technically, fine. But... You know,
it's actually funny. The first person I saw to have a conversation with Mr. Girl, even before Destiny, was Rose Riss.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's basically Destiny talking to him. So.
All right. Anyway, where were we in this frickin' in Manifest Destiny?
I don't even.
That's
what the stream's gonna be called.
Friendship section.
That's what we should have called it. Manifest Destiny. Oh, damn it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, he only gets to use that one once, and again, this is like the 9th manifesto I think he's put out. So
this is true.
The friendship section I think is one that is worthwhile because it focuses on, an underlying thing that I've criticized in a lot of various communities. And again, it's why some of the stuff he writes, I think, resonates with anyone. And that's the end of my sentence.
Hang on. Go on. Sorry, finish your sentence.
No, go for it.
So there's two things going on here. First of all, he quotes Albus Dumbledore, which is funny in and of itself. But secondly, if you know the actual context, it takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to your enemies, but a great deal more to stand up to your friends. Destiny is figuring himself as Neville Longbottom. And I will never stop finding that hilarious as a dogmatic obligation.
I have no idea what that reference
Neville wanted
is.
to be a snitch.
So now we're at two major pop culture things that I don't know what you're fucking talking about. So
you
there
fucker,
we
you
go.
worked on
Don't
you come onto my stream. You say, "Hey, I worked on Star Wars. I know these things."
I did.
And you don't know Harry Potter.
Holy shit, you worked on Star Wars?
worked on
I
Star
worked on
Wars.
Indiana Jones, Avatar.
It's
My
his
God,
fault.
dude. What is your job? Are you
I do. I get people coffee, and
Computer
it's-
parts. Hey, my
Yeah.
my computer is going to be built because of the help of my generous patrons, who are the best people alive, and Brooks, who just sent me like $500 worth of parts.
Oh,
we
no,
actually
more than
evaluated
that.
them, by the way.
Yeah.
No, we evaluated them. That was like
Nice.
actually $600 worth of components you gave me. So my computer is going to be upgraded at the end of this month because of Brooks. At the very least, 70%. Thank you.
Good for you, Brooks. You have such an interesting life because, like,
You have a 1080 Ti in there. Just to be very specific, if you didn't search 1080 Ti and only a 1080, just saying, there's a difference.
I did. on the advice of a friend who knew what that meant in the first place. To be clear, I don't know anything about this. I'm being this is like magic to me. I'm just being given the golden chalice.
Anytime I upgrade, I'm fortunate enough. Anytime I upgrade my personal computer, because I have my joke that I have the PC of Theseus, because at some point or another, it's the same computer I've had for about 9 years or 10 years, no, 14 years now. But every time I upgrade, I always send off the pieces to some random person. I never sell them because it just is nicer, I think.
Yeah. But,
So when we are playing Elden Ring next month, remember, it is Brooks we have to thank for this.
on a 1080 can a 1080 Ti run Elden Ring? Like
1080 Ti can run a lot.
okay.
It can run everything that's out right now.
I sent you a really good chip in there too, so
Yes, you
it
did.
should be good.
Yes, you did.
I don't know, because like 1080 is like, because isn't the big one the 30 whatevers right now?
3090 Ti's.
Yeah, something like that. Dude, the price gouging. I learned about.
They're actually right now. If anyone didn't know, because of the Bitcoin crash, go out right now and get yourself a video card.
Yeah.
Nvidia's debating on actually not releasing the 4000 series because they're overstocked now on 3000s, which is
Really?
hilarious.
You almost couldn't find these things a little while ago.
Yeah,
Yep.
because of Bitcoin, because they use the graphics processors to mine Bitcoin. But now that it's crashing,
It's not worth the money.
Yep. God, it was so hard. Like I learned enough about computers to build my PC, and I instantly forgotten everything about it because I never wanted to think about it ever again. Just all the small parts. I was so scared that like my motherboard was going to short out or something.
See, I'm the opposite. I find this fascinating. I would love to spend time to actually learn. I don't have time.
Yeah.
It's one of the weirdest things. Like, you think, oh, you're sitting in your house, like, on your computer, reading stuff and watching videos. You think, oh, you have so much free time. No, you don't. It's endless. Your brain never turns off. There's no rest.
So two responses. First, there's some truth to that. I built my first computer. My dad's best friend Bruce, he actually helped me build my first. It was a 386 with a turbo button, because I didn't build like my Commodore 64 or anything, and it was a nightmare. It took like all day. I couldn't understand anything it was doing. I was very young, and then but ever since then, I've only ever built computers. I've never bought a pre-built except for 2 laptops. But I even built my own laptop 3 times, because this is the other thing that sounds great, and I will say it's impressive that I did it when I did it, because back in the 90s building computers was not the same. Right now it is plug slot A into slot B, and that's it. It's the most insanely paint by numbers thing to do. It's incredible how far it's come. This is a
Anyway.
much better discussion.
Yeah.
Oh my
This is so
God.
much interesting
Yeah, we
than
need
the-
to. We need to. This is too much. This is too much for our audience. They're just not. They can't keep up. We need to. We need to go back to.
Well, so the
Friendship.
friendship thing, because my thing I wanted to talk about in there is there's an issue that there's a general issue, especially in American discourse, but this is everywhere, of the liberal mindset of the person, the things they say, being friends, that they're rational actors, that we can have conversations, that sure, they're wishing for genocide, but it's okay. This sort of mentality around it. And I read through Destiny's friendship thing because I'm always fascinated. Because I do think he actually isn't cynically friends with Lauren Southern or these other people. I've heard people say that. I don't have any reason to believe it. You're welcome to send me clips. I mean, I'm not a huge Destiny fan, but it seems like he's just friends with these people. But that to me is the problem. Like the fact that he can even do that is, I think, a worthwhile discussion.
I disagree.
Yeah,
and
you
I
want to
disagree.
talk about like
Let's go for it, Sunday.
I disagree for a very particular reason, and I think that I would agree with you if I wasn't paying a little bit closer attention to like how Destiny deals with people generally. I think Destiny recognizes something that I've said before, is that there is no such thing as friends between content creators in this particular space, because you live and die on your ability to predate upon the misfortune of the people around you. It's something I try to avoid, but I don't try to avoid it ubiquitously. Like I will do this with respect to people like Destiny. I'll do this with respect to Vosh sometimes. Like there are people who I count as friends, and if I have an issue with them, I will tell them privately. But when you're someone like Destiny, when every single interaction you have is with someone who has something ulterior to gain from their interaction with you, you have no friends. So it's this thing as friends. Every single person who talks to you, they're not talking to you because they like you. They're talking to you because they stand to gain a lot more money by talking to you. No, but here's the thing. Even if he wants to be friends with these people, he can't, because there will always, no matter what he does, be that unbreachable gulf of mistrust, because they will always be benefiting from it. The only people who can be friends with Destiny are people who have no on-screen presence at all.
it's interesting because Destiny has talked about. I used to watch Destiny a lot, and one thing he talks about is that he is one really fucking paranoid person, like
Justifiably.
to the point where, like, what he says when he's like friends with people is that he'll tell some people some pieces of information and tell other people some other pieces of information, just to see that if those pieces of information get around, he knows exactly who has been spreading it.
Proving that he's watched Game of Thrones and thinks nobody else has, which is hilarious. But secondly, proving that he has too much free time, as you were.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like, I don't think I don't know if most people are like really that into trying to catch people on stuff.
Yes.
But
hang on.
Yeah.
Here, in this job, yes, they are. And don't get into it if you think otherwise. No, seriously.
Mm,
Don't. Even among friends. Even among friends, by the way, knives out all the time.
Interesting.
Go on.
I just don't
Hang
know
on,
if some of these people have the emotional
serious,
wherewithal.
Serious. Stop. Brooks has been gutturally moaning. He wants to speak. Go.
One of my close friends
Yes.
that I had for a long time was a producer at Fox News. And I mean the real Fox News, not local. He was Shep Smith's producer, and he was a Trumper. Now, our relationship wasn't predicated on that. In fact, I didn't know about his political beliefs for most of our relationship. Because, one, Trump didn't obviously exist so I've known him since 1999, 2000-ish. And twice a year we would talk on the phone. If I went to New York, we'd visit, we'd have lunch. He'd take me through. Shep Smith, who's a really kind of wonderful guy, really nice. The part of what you're saying is true. This guy, who was a producer at Fox News and a significantly powerful one as far as producers at Fox News go, didn't have a chance to have friends in the same way. You tend to stick in some level of social caste. I have friends who are excessively rich, and I am not. It's rare that someone who has a shit ton of money or power has someone as a friend who has none of that, because very often people are trying to get things. I would argue specifically, let's talk about Lauren Southern, and let's talk about Nick Fuentes, and let's talk about Destiny. There are some differences and some similarities to the experiences I have, and I want to kind of talk through that. The place that it is somewhat the same, I think, is the matter of someone else's power is such a personal and situational thing that from the outside, we could say that Destiny and Nick Fuentes have a disparity of power. I actually think you could very easily make an argument that this isn't true. I think we could say from a viewership perspective, sure. But a finance perspective, Nick Fuentes is quite taken care of. He's getting, remember, we've got that Bitcoin deposit of $250,000 that was in the Jan 6 hearing subpoenas. He's taken care of. The right has money. Lauren Southern is taken care of. That's not so much it. From our perspective, we see Destiny's bigger because, on Twitch, he's massive. But when it comes to actual political power, Destiny is effectively neutered. If no one remembers, there was a hilarious thing when he was trying to do like a
real political action. He got like 12 people to go do.
He got nobody showed up. Nick Fuentes farts and more than 12 people show up. So
just to be fair, like he coordinated in Georgia to get people canvassing. What really imploded was when he tried to do a local election next, and because he was much more closely affiliated with the with the person, like his name got attached to that person, and then their campaign imploded as a result of being associated with Destiny, who has a trillion controversies that you can look up.
Yeah. So well, hang on, but that doesn't go against what Brooks is saying. It's just the point is, again, like Destiny by himself has no political clout whatsoever in fact, and the only reason why he's drifting in the Nick Fuentes direction is because his total lack of discipline and actual attachment to anything meaningful can continue to thrive in that sphere, whereas the audience he's built up, ostensibly defending trans rights, etc., all these different things, immigrants' rights, things like that,
are useless.
He can't behave as he will because he has no discipline again.
I don't see. You're
Go on.
You're going slightly different than me. I'm saying that we see Nick Fuentes as attaching to Destiny because Destiny has more people, and maybe that'll bring more people to Nick Fuentes' platform. I think there's some truth to that, and
not quite. I don't think it'll bring more people to Nick Fuentes' platform. I mean, it will.
Whatever it is, I don't believe it matters. Sure, and Nick Fuentes may get a few more people. I actually think that what we're seeing is the literal opposite, that it's not Nick Fuentes going to him, but that Destiny sees Nick Fuentes and Lauren Southern as actually having political expediency and power.
Yes.
And he is wanting to attach to that and siphon that off.
No, I agree with that. The point I'm getting at is that the negative consequence of him, for example, advertising the cozy thing and having like these regular interactions, it's not that it's giving Nick Fuentes like such a massive boost to his audience. It is giving him a massive boost to his audience. The main thing is that it acts again as a lifeline for him on platforms that he's already been removed from. So he's been removed from YouTube. That entire avenue is gone. He can't debate people on YouTube. He can't host things, etc., except when Destiny brings him on and effectively eliminates his ban for the duration of that interaction. I don't like what Twitch does, for example, to offset that kind of thing. But on your end of it, yeah, absolutely. He's going in that direction because it's a movement that's growing in power and influence right now. I don't know if that growth is going to be continuous into the future for very long, but it's absolutely there. What it demonstrates is that whenever he figured himself as being a defender of any one of these groups of people who are being targeted by people like Nick Fuentes and Lauren Southern and all these sorts of people, whenever he did so, whenever he took up that position in debate or whatever, that was purely opportunistic. He never gave a shit about them, because when push comes to shove, for the barest social advantage, he'll advantage the people who are actively trying to deprive
but again, Nick Fuentes and Lauren Southern aren't out to kill brown people. They believe what they are doing is actually in the best interests of everyone.
Yeah, but in
And
the
if
case
genocide happens,
well,
they're fine with it down the road. But the way that they talk about it, the way that they actually express themselves quite seriously, is the reason Lauren Southern, as an example, a lot of the shit she did about South Africa, a lot of the shit she did about refugees, it's all disgusting. But the way she spoke about it is, if we didn't allow refugees, if we actually pushed them back, and she used, for example, Australia as an example, you just won't have them come across, and therefore they'll be safer.
here's
Shout out to
here's hang on,
Loverbox, who
hang
had a
on.
great
Wait.
video on that.
Yeah, but here's the problem, Brooks, and I agree with you to a point, but here's the problem. You were assuming a level of sincerity on her end that I know from experience, as I was talking about earlier, with respect to like how I sort of acted as a chameleon, as a right winger. You were assuming that she was being sincere in that end and not using that as a cover for what she actually wants to do. And push comes to shove, like, she didn't just make arguments about, like, hey, we need to stop immigration or else these people are going to make the trek and they're going to die. No, she went out there to impede people who were rescuing them. So, in actual fact, like, it may... Like,
right, because and again, I am not justifying.
No, you're not. Sorry, to be clear, like I get that.
I do not like her at all. She's vile. She's disgusting, awful. But she went out to stump because if the conservatives talk about safe harbor laws that cities have, if you allow safe harbor laws, immigrants will know where to go. More immigrants will come in, and they say things, and they do feel generally like this, that it gives a dangerous place for people to go. It's where crime will go. Things will go bad. It's bad for everyone. Now, whether they don't think through the steps of the things. They don't think systemically. Conservatives do not think systemically. They think progressually with very specific steps. They plan like that. They don't think systemically and procedurally. And as such, when Lauren Southern's out there, when Nick Fuentes is out there, they believe their steps are doing. Now, down the road, are they building the situation that's going to enable a grand-scale genocide? Fucking of course they are. That's what they do. But this is not where they start. This is not where they ever start. This is if you go back to Weimar Republic and you talk about what Hitler originally wrote and all the people around him, they didn't start this way. Where it went is, over time, as they grew power because of poverty and the extreme economic situation, the liberals literally put Hitler in power because they tended to agree on those things. This is what we're seeing in our society today. And again, it's because the general emotional reaction that Lauren Southern has and these other people that have political efficacy, liberals who are by nature neutered dogs, they see that and they want to be able to get out there and fuck. And they know this will give them a chance to have balls. And that's why liberals love this stuff. Again, it's the idea at its base is that fascism is arousing to the liberal is factual. And it's the direction they go because it's immediately, hey, generally speaking, hey, we're not necessarily super far apart. I'm not going to go as far as them, but emotionally, I get what they're saying and we can find a common ground. That's how this starts. And that's how the friendship section reads brutally. Because to go back to my example, my relationship with my buddy who worked at Fox News was predicated on us knowing each other first. Political shit over time changed. It made conversations difficult. We gave each other shit, but we knew the lines and we didn't cross it and we didn't talk about politics. Their relationship, and this is the difference, is built on the political messages they've been screaming about for the last decade that have in theory been completely opposed. In actuality and practice, they are not. And we're just seeing that in practice move on to another point. That's it.
I agree with you to an extent, but I kind of find it hard to believe that Nick Fuentes especially, and even Lauren Southern, like, are coming at this from like a sincere place of wanting what's best for most people. I'm more in Sunday's camp of thinking that it's just a cover, because like you can look at the older videos that Lauren Southern has made, as well as like some of the old stuff that Nick Fuentes has said, and like their rhetoric has changed over time to be much more moderate sounding to somebody who's not paying close attention. And, that to me indicates not that they are actually being more moderate or that they were starting off moderate, but just that we're already extreme and are using these as cover positions for what they actually want.
I don't believe that people do that. I've known Nazis, and there's a level where that's true with dog whistles, but that exists because they have an emotional repression that they don't want to be ostracized from society. Nick Fuentes has none of that. He has no need for that. He doesn't care about that. He makes that very clear with how he discusses and talks about things. So to say he's hiding things or going sideways about things, I'm hesitant to believe any of that with him. And I would say with Destiny, I have no reason to believe that he hides things. I think he utilizes rhetoric to dance around things, but I don't think he hides things. And I don't think any of them do. I think they're doing what they do. And again, they're pushing ultimately in the same fascist direction. Like, that's the way that works.
I guess, so, it's kind of hard for me to believe that, Nick Fuentes doesn't actually, is actually, in his heart of hearts trying to look out for people when he's making jokes about how he doesn't think the Holocaust happened, or constantly talking about race and IQ differences, or when he takes the political compass test, answers that he thinks some races are actually inferior. I don't know, man. It seems much more descriptive of what he believes to just say that he has racist beliefs, not that he is trying to push in a direction that he actually thinks is optimal for everyone involved.
But again, he has racist beliefs that he's proud of, because to him, the underlying reality is that race is something that is biological, and that the underlying ills of society are caused by a generalized race mixing and an appeal towards a romanticized time prior to when that didn't happen, which it never did. And so that appeal and that emotion is something that, as you can read in what Destiny's writing about trans people, is identical.
Yeah, but the question is it's bad for who?
Here's the problem.
What I'm saying.
Here's the actual. Hang on. Sarah, just 1 second. Here's the actual problem. Okay. And I agree with you, Brooks. We were talking about anybody else. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody of Nick Fuentes' description, except for one major critical factor, I agree. Here's the critical factor. If Nick Fuentes changes his mind, or if he hears some compelling argument to the contrary, he still maintains his lifestyle by avowing the opposite.
I don't understand what you're saying.
What I'm saying is, it's impossible to say if he's actually proud of anything. Because it may very well be the case that at a certain threshold, it really is just the financial benefits that you gain from holding these positions, and the social benefits and all these different things that actually keeps you where you are. Yeah, is he actually proud of these things? I don't think someone who behaves the way he does has the capacity for pride.
He LARPs as a Catholic, but he was... The right-wing sphere kind of imploded recently because he was outed, or at least alleged to have been very, very gay behind the scenes. And people, I follow a couple right-wing accounts on Twitter just so I can get the sense of what's going on in that community. And they it seems to me that he is just a hypocrite in a lot of ways, and that many of the positions that he's quote unquote proud of or espouses on his program are not things that he actually holds to in his private life.
I'm not saying, again, none of that to me is a thing. I'm not discussing whether or not he holds any of these views. I'm talking about the emotional resonances and how he views and what he's invested in as a being. When you're talking about someone like him, and I would be hesitant to say that he's gay or anything else, I would say he is horrifyingly repressed. And I think that's a thing anyone can agree with. And it turns out that when you're horrifyingly repressed, as I think we all realize, shit comes out in a lot of ways, and it's not healthy. And that sort of thing is, underlying all of this. When we have someone who is deeply repressive and again, to go back to what Destiny just wrote about trans people and how it needs to be scientific and biological, and it can't just be this weird thing. It's like, this repressive generalized behavior is something that is absolutely simply fascist, and that's how that works.
Okay, maybe.
Again,
maybe.
that's just how it works.
Maybe, and I agree with you, but there's an additional factor here, right? Where people see people do this and make bank doing so. And so now we have actually a dichotomy of possibilities here. One is where this person is indeed repressed and his behaviors can be explained in terms of that. Or this person is imitating those behaviors because they make him money and get him stature that he would otherwise not have a chance of sniffing at. And these may be distinct. I don't know. Like, it could be the case that it's both. But it may also be that he's this one, which accounts for a lot of the discrepancies, why he doesn't get along with a lot of these people behind the scenes, except when they have to play ball to make money themselves.
Well, and again, this is, and it's the thing I've said to you before. I have a huge problem with, pretending that we can have any semblance of divining someone's intention.
Sure, but that works both ways, right? That works both ways. It's not just with respect to determining whether or not there are like nefarious influences, but there are sincere the influences of some kind of damage. Like if maybe he is indeed repressed, but I mean,
he is repressed. It's of course he is. He believes in hyper-specific gender roles that men should not be fucking or even jerking off. Like, he's insane. He's a hardcore supposed tradcath. Like, yeah, he's absolutely repressed. Of course.
If he's a tradcath, if he's not doing
it doesn't even matter if he actually. Yeah. Again, I don't give a shit if he actually is a tradcath. I'm talking about the general. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Fair enough. I follow.
My point is just that these are the things he screams about, and it's like Alex Jones. Yeah. I don't know how much Alex Jones actually believes. I think he believes actually a good amount of it, but the way that he absolutely behaves, and again, when we're talking about the specific things about the Catboy revelations and all of the stuff that he was doing personally, those are things we can point at and go, that is a repressed person. That is this. These are the ways these things surface. I don't have to divine Destiny's mentality here. Destiny is like most liberals, and he openly talks about being one, the omniliberal. That mentality is one of where the market goes, understanding power and achieving it. And whatever is allowed within that space is fine. You can separate people from their deeds, and we should be able to talk to each other civilly. Those lessons that we've been taught, those lessons that all of us are sort of beaten up as children until we do it right, is what defines liberalism. And these are the things that we can just look at his general behavior and the things he's literally writing. I don't have to divine anything about him to say these are the reasons he's doing those things. He's fairly open about it as far as I can tell.
Yeah. Maybe
it doesn't have to be a grift. It doesn't have to be a grift. Like, we use that word for fucking everything. It doesn't have to be a grift.
No, but it doesn't have to be sincere either. Look, I'm
not saying it's sincere.
No, I know you're not. I'm just saying, like, for me, I think this is maybe where I might be inclined to differ a little bit. Is I don't necessarily think there's a center of gravity in either direction necessarily. It's just what I can identify here, because again, what we are discussing aren't just people and aren't just behaviors. We're talking about media personas. And like when I think about this, and I've noticed this too, like I do really well as a right-wing character. I do really well. In fact, originally I thought of myself before I ever launched the channel, when I had the avatar, I thought of myself as doing that. That's why I was like going the whole like Sargon route with the aesthetic and everything. Like that's one of the, like, I wasn't thinking in terms of like monetary, I was being sincere at the time. But like, you know, like there are centers, there are centers of gravity. There are things that sort of pull you to certain kinds of behaviors. Besides beliefs, it's also just like, what does the medium require of you or suggest to you as like the way to succeed, i.e. to make money doing it, to be able to like sustain yourself. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. But I think we can clearly see, just in this document, even if I'd never heard of Destiny, you can clearly see what he is at a base desire invested in at a social level.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And you can say very cleanly. Again, I don't think it's about lying. I don't think it's about divining anything. This is just, hey, he is into the traditional gender roles. He's into very specific realities around other things. He's got a generalized reactionary tendency, and he wants people very specifically to treat anyone around as if they are a human first. That investment is a very particularly liberal thing, and it's one that, to me, I think speaks to a please treat me that way. It's what he wants. He wants the world to be. It's what he's invested in. It is the thing he wants, and it is. I'm a person too, and not necessarily the things I say or the things I do, and it's a.
Well, here's the thing, right? I agree with you, but here's like fair enough. But here's the thing, though, right? It's actually it's unintuitive, but it's sort of flipped. It's not he's a person too. Of course he's a person too. All we know about Destiny is his person, like literally just the mask that he puts on as the thing that is his social engagement with the world politically, right? He's a person, but he's also a human too. And that's what he's invoking here. So he's like, people are upset about me being friends with Nick Fuentes and Lauren Southern, but people think I'm some inhuman machine who will process friendships solely for political alignment or advance, sometimes seemingly forgetting how many people who are politically close to me have treated me in the past. Here's the problem, though. If you wanted them to be friends, you would never see it. Because the only thing that would maintain that purity as being an actual friendship is that they don't have the monetary benefit or the social benefit or the political benefit of being aired on his platform to an alien audience. But because they're doing that, this guarantees, and for the same reason that someone like Vosh or Hassan or any of these other people would bother attacking him in the first place, is because being associated with his visible persona has extrinsic benefits to engaging with the human behind them. If he wants friends, nobody cares if he's like flirting with Nick Fuentes at 3 a.m. in the morning. Nobody would think twice about it. It'd be a little weird to find out secretly, but it'd be like, you know what? It's not hurting anybody. He's just communicating with other people.
But you're talking about someone who his literal skill is in his job and his career and his sort of thing he does is streaming, and he's made friends. What is their skill and their job? Streaming.
So
of
what?
course, that's what.
Just
but
don't.
no, this is. You're asking someone. It's like saying to someone, "Hey, I know you're a dancer, and I know you're dating. You're going to go hang out with that other dancer over there. You guys can't dance." This is what they do. Like, you think that these people who stream 8 to 10 hours a day and have these stupid political debates have multifaceted personalities?
Look, I take your point. But the difference is that if they go out dancing, they're not going to convince 100 other dancers to go
My
shoot
point
up
is
a
they
camp
don't
somewhere.
have it. They don't have. I'm not disagreeing with, but again, like start first at what do you and I do? Do we hang out?
No, but you're in like the States somewhere.
Do we game outside of the stream? Do we talk often outside of the stream?
We chat outside of the stream.
Non-stream stuff. About non-stream stuff, like what? Twice.
Talk about politics, video games.
This is what we do. This is the place we talk.
Yeah, but that's only because I invite you on.
I could invite you on.
No, this is true, but I've got the bigger audience.
Yeah, so you're platforming me, and I thank you for it.
You're welcome. Don't forget it.
My point more is this is like you and I also were a little different in the sense that one of the things that connects us about stuff is we actually read philosophical books and we like to discuss them, and we read them, and that is a pastime. Again, I'm talking about the only thing these people do is this one thing. And so there's not a second thing they can do together. They could play video games together, not on stream, but they don't do that at all. Yeah, I would be shocked if Destiny plays video games off stream.
There's got to be no joy in it anymore. It's just his job. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the whole thing put together. It's the person who's worked themselves into a specific place where the only way they can fucking come during sex is like plug this in over there and do this. And
look, we got a limited skill set, but you know what I would do if you were in like driving distance or whatever? I'd invite you out for a beer sometime. There'd be no.
I probably wouldn't take you up on it though.
You probably wouldn't, but that's what I do. And Destiny could do that.
They probably have done that. How many times how many times has Fuentes been on a stream? My underlying point, this is what he does for a living. This is what Fuentes does for a living. This is what Laura Southern does for a living. To say that they can never, the first thing he wants to do is share the thing he does do and that he seems to actually enjoy and has done for a living with these people who claim to do the same thing. That's it. Now, yes, it's horrifyingly dangerous. You're making the assumption underneath it all that Destiny's not a fascist. I'm already at that point where my presumption is, especially after reading this, for sure he is. Now, the question is degrees, and the question is what that means. But if someone's already over there politically, and as far as he's concerned, he's talking to equals. He's powerful on Twitch, sure. They've got their own platforms with lots of people following that are actually more powerful politically. When you mentioned the thing about, you can't be with people who are smaller, they just want to use you. They're equals. Sure, they're using him in the way we see it. He might be using them too. Rich people have friends like that. That's how it works for rich people. That's how it works for powerful people. And so he goes on stream with them once in a while. It's not every day. They probably may do other things. He claims to be friends with them in this document. I would just take him at his word that he's just genuinely friends with them and this is what they do. Do I think it's horrifying? Fucking absolutely. I think most of his audience does too. Like a lot of people are stunned.
I don't doubt for a second that he's friends with them. I have serious doubts that they're friends with him. That makes sense.
Oh no, I think he's probably extremely personable in real life, and they probably get along quite well.
Yeah. That's fair.
I mean, I don't have a reason to think otherwise.
I mean, you're right. The perversity.
They don't have. Yeah. They're in the same position. You think they don't have? Do you think Nick Fuentes goes out and makes a lot of Nazi friends who don't have power? No, there was probably a reason that there's a very small circle of people who, especially on that side of things. Lauren Southern, who's she going to hang out with? It's the same thing. They would be used by people inside of their circles, the same way, others use Destiny to climb up. So they have the same problem. They're still people underneath it all. They still have the same underlying sort of desire to connect, to do things, to explore, and to do all that. They're giant piles of shit who ruin the world. Absolutely. But they're still people. It's not like they ruin the world all day. They eat breakfast. They shit. They jerk off. They fucking come online. They yell about black people and immigrants. And then they get off and they probably text their friends about, LOL, did you watch the new fucking Stranger Things? They're just shitheads like the rest of us. They just happen to be super fascist. And again, I don't think anyone's shocked by that. Destiny's a fascist. It's this hardcore transmedicalism that's in here that's completely discounting the entire concept of gender theory and queerness as a concept, which is hilarious. To say that's gone. The entire way that I think at one point he talks about how being politically correct is the leftist version of dog whistles and which is just insane. And I hope I don't have to go into why political correctness and identity politics are actually reactionary things. He's doing all of the stuff that Dennis Miller did for a while. And we see all the time these people who are supposedly liberals who are really right wing just make that switch. And turns out it's not a switch in retrospect. It turns out this is where they were.
I haven't said anything in a while. Mostly just been letting you guys go at it.
No, Charmhole got a mention. Charmhole, a random Pollux orbiter on Twitch, claims he has a clip of me assaulting him. Fascinating. Charmhole's in that ball.
It's tough. My buddy who's that producer at Fox, you know why we were friends?
Oh.
I didn't have a lot of friends. Post Columbine, I basically lost all my friends. People wouldn't talk to me. Internationally, a pariah, which is a fun thing to be. And it became this really strange moment where I happened to be, a few reporters I kept in touch with, and he was one of those who reached out and he wanted to know I was okay. He'd send me gift cards for food when I was really, really broke and super, super poor. And over time, we just talked about things and he kind of guided me through stuff. And At some point, I learned that he has social friends, a lot of them. He had social friends and a lot of them, but he could not have people that he really talked to and cared about, because this is what you do. People who make it in that industry, who become producers in news or television of any semblance of power, you can't have them as friends, because everyone just wants to figure out what they can get from you. And
Right.
it's across the board. And it just so happened I just never gave a shit about that. So we became friends. And granted, he wasn't a Nazi. he was a hard populist right-wing guy in a lot of ways, but he wasn't a Nazi. And I'm not making excuses for the Nazism. I'm just saying, dude, life is fucking super lonely. And the more that we push people, yeah, it gets difficult. It's one of the great challenges we have, is that the general reality of the fascist and reactionary life is disgusting and we must excise them. But as people sort of lean that way, and they do from a very early age, there is a specific type of work that needs to be done to help them see themselves and to help them remove that repression, to help them move into a more positive, self-accepting and affirming light. And that work is undermined by the reactionary machine that is social media in general. All of social media. Twitter is a nightmare and a shithole.
Just to clarify, what do you mean by post-Columbine?
Oh, I mean, I was a student there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a whole story. Like, it's like a thing that, like, ugh. Yeah, it's like totally like, but
I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, I brought it up. You're good. I'm just giving you shit. It's been like, luckily more than half of my life has happened since then, so I've kind of gotten a chance to get a little bit past it, at least in some ways. But my underlying point is, like, the machine of social media is built to reaction, to shock, and to attention. This means that it's built for reactionary right-wing fascism, period. That's just the way it works. No one left will ever grow in this space. It is not possible. That's why the machine is built the way that it is. And so the underlying reality is, as those people get pushed, the reactionary left, and there is a reactionary left that yells at people and screams, they're doing the work of fascism, which is fun because, well, it makes them more fascist too. It's just this great system that we have that's slowly destroying the world and gonna, get us all killed. But yeah, this is destiny. Is that?
I'm a little bit confused.
But hang on. But they can know better, right? Like, it may be the case. It may be the case that as a result of everything you've described, that the center of gravity is indeed just that. That is how you succeed. But once there, which someone like Destiny is, someone like Hassan is, someone like Vosh is.
How have you ever been lonely? Like that level of lonely where the world? No. Have you ever had the entire world know your name and not be able to call someone to talk about how sad you are?
I mean, you can do that without having the world know your name too. It's not.
No. But yes, and I've been there, and I've also been in a place where the world knows your name and you can't talk to anyone. Everyone cares about you, they say. Everyone has parasocial feelings for you, they say. You do not have a friend in the world, and you are alone. And it's a unique thing to be in a desert of people. It is a very unique thing, and a unique type of loneliness that is much more oppressive, I believe. If no one's around and you're actually alone, it's difficult. Not going to knock otherwise. I've had not fun times, but there's a unique thing when you feel like everyone should care about you. Everyone says they care about you, and you can't talk to anyone because everyone is trying to ruin you, love you, has their image of you in their head, whatever it is. You can't have just a conversation honestly with anyone in the world. It's a unique thing, and it's a very, very, very painful place to be.
You should retire.
I won't disagree with that, but can he?
Yeah, of course he can. Look,
How?
He can just...
How? Does he have enough money to retire?
Who are we talking about
It's
retiring?
Destiny.
Destiny. Okay.
Yeah.
Does he have enough money to retire? I don't think so. You need around 12 to 13 million dollars to retire. I would assume probably with the house he owns and the lifestyle he wants to live, he needs
Well,
around
slow down,
25
slow down.
million
He
at least.
doesn't need to retire. Just retire from politics. Like, if he wants to do gaming streams, he has the option to do it. He could be very successful doing so. That's how he built his original audience. Just go back to the casual PewDiePie thing. You do great. Nobody be mad at him. It's the responsible thing to do.
It's very easy to say.
Of course it is.
It's very easy to say to do that.
I don't know. I look around and I see people who are trying to do this, responsibly on nothing, and I think, okay, like, if the point is that, like, it would be very difficult, it'd be relatively difficult to stop the hustle, because the hustle in question is abetting people or destroying other people's lives, and that's too much for you. What are we even talking about anymore? Like, at that point, we're talking about a bug.
We're talking about, look, at a real level, what we're talking about right now is what options are in front of Destiny and what can you choose. I have this argument with people quite a bit. Let's take a very extreme example of this. Jeff Bezos tomorrow, can he turn Amazon into a worker cooperative? He could. Absolutely. He could start making that movement. He could start doing the things that are needed to. Would he be allowed to? No.
Probably not.
Absolutely fucking not. He would not be allowed to.
Not even the CEO anymore, but like even when he was.
Even when he was, what could he do? Elon Musk,
could he just kick him off?
Could Elon Musk just put in everything that we want in a socialist paradise? Could all the billionaires of the world, all 25 fucking richest people, just pool their money together, turn us into a socialist paradise? Sure.
Look, I know that Destiny can do it because Vosh did it first. For the longest time, all Vosh did was he just played Metroid, and he didn't really talk to anybody. He did this whole stupid fortress thing. Now, that was dumb. But there's absolutely nothing.
Isn't that still going on?
Supposedly.
Not so much. Like, it was never like a dogmatic thing, but for a little while it was. And there's nothing at all. It wouldn't even impede him. If anything, it might actually, he might do a little bit better.
But again, the reason I bring up Jeff Bezos is let's bring up one that's more near and dear to the left's heart.
Sure.
Fat people not eating. Is that what we tell them?
No.
Is that what we tell them? Is that what we say to them? We go, hey, I know you got a weight problem. Why don't you just go on a diet there? Is that what we do? Is that how we talk about it?
No.
Because that's the same thing. There's a very big difficulty in breaking habits that have literally been built into us and rewarded into us for, in Destiny's case, 14 years for 20 hours a day. Every waking moment, he has had this thing reinforced in him. The idea that he could just step away or make a change is not possible.
Of course it's possible.
No.
It depends on what you mean. If, like...
It's not reasonable to expect.
Well, it's not reasonable to expect a decision made on principle against any center of gravity generally, but it's not unreasonable to expect that someone of a caliber meriting consideration would nonetheless make that decision, because it may be the case that we're basically presenting him with a dilemma, like, prove you're not an insect, right? Like, I'd have tremendous respect for him if he did that, at least much more so than I have now. Now, if that's... Not that he would care for my respect in particular, but if being something a little bit more or a little bit less isn't enough, well, that question is answered.
But again, were we talking about someone who literally had made their world about changing their opinions all the time? Yeah, I would be with you. We're not. We're really not.
No, but he thinks he is. Or he thinks we are, rather.
He thinks that he's about changing his opinions all the time?
He thinks he's about just following the arguments and making friends with people based upon...
But he's not.
No, he's not. You're right.
It's habits and repetition of life that is deeply rewarded over years and years and decades is incredibly difficult to change. To do so and to say that the nature, especially in a hyper capitalist system where the option of not taking part in the market literally means death, and it is how it is taught to
It
us.
doesn't mean death for everybody, though, and he knows
I
this.
I it it doesn't literally, well,
It doesn't even
prove it.
It doesn't mean death for me. It doesn't mean
Depends
death for
on-
someone 10 times my size. It doesn't mean death for someone 100 times my size. What it
Yeah,
means.
but it depends
What?
on what you're
It absolutely
accustomed
does.
to, right? Like Destiny is accustomed to a certain kind of lifestyle as is, and he can only sustain that lifestyle by continuing down the path that he's already on. Like we, in a lot of ways, we define like our expectations of what we want and like our own happiness in relation to like
Hey,
like,
look. I'm
how
gonna
we're-
give you
how we're
knockdown.
expecting.
Hang on. Look, knockdown counter argument. Okay, Hunter Avalon, bigger audience than Destiny on this platform. He switched, and you can't say he's cynical because when he lost almost his entire following after doing so, he stayed the course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hunter
it's not a
Avalon,
knockdown
Hunter
argument.
Avalon is
I
not
mean,
a Hunter
well-
Avalon is not a genius. Okay, he's a normal guy.
I know.
But he
Hun-
did
Hun-
that, and he lost
Okay.
more.
Okay, but like
Hunter
this
never
is
really.
just like pointing to like the one person who like made it rich by investing in stocks and saying like, see, poor people, why can't you just do that? Like Hunter Avalon was able to do it because, despite being a normal guy, like he committed to it and somehow like ended up pulling it out. But not everybody
Convinced by
has
someone
that
like
kind
Shoe
of,
on Head of all things. Not everybody has, at the end of the day, slotted into their psyche. What I want to be is somebody who doesn't live off of predating upon weaker people. That's what we're describing here, and the reason why I'm pushing back, because obviously I take Brooks's point. It's trivially obvious. Like he has no incentive to do otherwise than what he's doing right now. But that's the problem, because better people, despite having his resources, would, or they'd have incentive not to get there in such a way as they are then required to do so. That in itself, like we can take like this holistic sort of systemic view of things where we're taking into account of all the little pressures from all these different areas that now are forcing him into making decisions endlessly that are in some sense atrocious yet sort of inevitable. But he chose that to be the case at some point. He made decisions that made that the situation. Now.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like that's also true, as Brooke said, for like a lot of fat people. Like a lot of fat people made
Sure.
decisions
Absolutely.
at some point in their lives that led to them being like fat. But it's not necessarily reasonable to say to them, "Oh, why don't you just go on a diet?" And to be fair to you, like the stakes for that one are much different. Like there is a difference in the sense that when a fat person doesn't go on a diet,
Yeah.
it's hurting them.
No,
it's
no,
not
no.
hurting
You're right.
anybody
I
else.
think the analogy though would not be telling them to go on a diet.
All right.
The analogy would be, in inviting them to go on like mild like walking events or something to attempt to help them, and noticing that instead they said, no, I'd rather go to McDonald's or something, and then you making a calculation, okay, well, what does this person actually care about activities? But at the same point, like while we don't blame somebody for falling prey to an addiction because it does override your will, by the same token, the bare fact of somebody having an addiction doesn't therefore cleanse everything that they do.
I'm not saying
you
it
treat it
does.
with a level of compassion, but at the same, this platform, he does so with enough rarity that I find that a little bit difficult to believe in the first place. But there's nothing stopping him because he knows how this dynamic works. It's the basis of the complaints against him for interacting with people like Lauren Southern and Nick Fuentes. He could make better peers. He built Mr. Girl's platform almost from nothing. He could do that with somebody better. There's nothing stopping him. They exist. There are hundreds of people competing for the limelight right now.
I mean, to an extent, but like, if, you know, having somebody like kind of as deranged as Mr. Girl on is, you know, that's entertaining content to his audience, right? Whereas, you know, if he brings on someone like you who is like, you know, not unhinged and not going to say things that are like totally off the wall, that's not as that just doesn't have the same punch, you know? Like, bringing on like Rose Wrist, for example, like Rose Wrist doesn't have hot takes or whatever, but then, you know, he can when he, like, I was looking up the Mr. Girl videos earlier because
Okay, hang on. We're apparently freezing. One moment. It looks like it's caught up a little bit. We might have lost a bit of YouTube's not receiving enough video maintenance stream.
Alright.
That's frustrating. Okay. I think we're back now. It says it's in the green, so I don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I was saying, right. So like, when I was looking up those those videos earlier, like the titles of those Mr. Girl videos are like, Mr. Girl leaves Destiny speechless. Like, you know, that's like engaging, right? And those videos have like 100,000 views because Mr. Girl, despite being totally deranged, is also very interesting and makes for good content.
My conversation with Destiny got over 100,000 views as well.
That's fair. Okay. Interesting.
I'm boring as all hell. No, the framing is everything. At this point, Destiny is what brings in the views. It's not the interlocutor.
Interesting.
I mean, truly, like it may indeed be the case that like, well, Destiny's interacting with this insane person, so yeah, let's go watch. But at the same time, the key part of that is not insane person; it's Destiny's interacting with.
Okay.
And there are plenty of those that are not in that domain. Like there are people with really bizarre positions and really bizarre ways of arguing them, with really bizarre behaviors and really bizarre commitments, who are nonetheless genuinely interesting and aren't human trash who he shouldn't be giving a free leg up to just because it's good content. You know what's also good content? Hey, the new horror game just came out. I'm gonna play through that. Whoa, the thing's chasing me. Don't remember to like and subscribe.
I actually don't know if that's good content for Destiny, because Destiny doesn't have those kinds of like reactions to things.
You don't need them. No, not all the time, right? Like a lot of his 90% of his streams are him silently clicking around, just like, oh yeah, that's true. That's kind of interesting. Yeah. Oh really?
That's true.
And that's it. People aren't watching it. For like the biting political commentary. People are watching it for the vibes. The biting political commentary just sells you this is a guy you want to be around. It justifies the endless nothing. That's what that is.
Yeah, that's kind of my point. But yeah,
fair enough.
I'm honestly, we're like, it's so late, and we're so far off what we were.
I don't think we're far off. I really don't, because look, you can sit here and we can bitch about Destiny all we want and do the drama play and all of that. My question is, what do we do? What's the prescriptive? What's the rule of this? What is the thing that should happen? Because just bitching about someone because obviously Christ, the entire thing on meta ontology and all of that was just embarrassing. But like, what is the thing then? Because, and I will say it again, I don't believe it is as easy as just saying, make the choice, just retire, all of that. We can fight about it all you want, but if that's just the thing, if the only thing we have to say is, hey, just make a choice and don't do those things, it feels like you're shooting BBs at a freight train of excessive emotional investment that he's got and the people around him in specific things.
Or,
I mean,
or,
so then is it not
or-
incumbent on us? Oh,
or, yeah, be quiet. That's why you're in jail. Or, you're never gonna outgrow that. I'm gonna be saying that until you're like in your 30s and in a job somewhere. I'm just gonna be, people are.
I'm never going back there. I'm not even in a dorm next semester, so
They took away your bed.
you'll never see that
You
set
were
again.
behaving. You were behaving badly. You don't even have to get a dorm anymore. They just chain you up in the yard. Yeah. Or what we're doing is we are engaging to increase our profile so that we are not shooting BB guns at some point in the future. We hope, right?
So what I was gonna ask is like Brooks, maybe the answer
If
is
you're
that-
actually going to be leftist, you're never going to be close to a place where you're going to be able to criticize someone like Destiny. That's not how social media works, YouTube works, and the algorithm works. Your best bet is to maybe hope that he sees a thing and he's able to engage in some way, or that you're able to attract him because you say something.
You say that, but Keffels has
I
been
know.
cited ad nauseum in this document. She left scars.
She got his fucking channel banned, and she
Yeah.
did it, by the way, in a way I think is fucked up.
I disagree.
To be perfect,
I disagree. I don't think she got his channel banned at all. I don't think she had anything to do with that. I think that was bullshit.
I would love to see a reason both of them say
Oh,
that's the
okay.
reason.
Well, Brooks, I have to ask, like, if we agree that like saying just retire or just do something else is like not really much of a prescription, is it not then incumbent on us to try to get these people off of the platforms that they're inhabiting? Like, wouldn't Destiny's channel ban, like, we could say, you know, that's praxis on Keffel's part, because she's you know, getting Destiny off of this platform when otherwise he wouldn't be doing anything to change. Like, what do you not think that if you're saying that it's not enough to just criticize, do you not think that because we need to be more proactive, and that should be our prescription?
Sunday and I had a recent discussion on deplatforming because of the debate I moderated. So I won't go over it too much, but whatever we may think, the idea of flat out removing people from what is, because of our shitty hyper-capitalist garbage world we live in, the commons that we once had is YouTube, Twitter, and these handful of platforms. Blogs don't matter. Nothing else matters. None of it matters. There's a reason, like Nick Fuentes, his stupid little site doesn't even matter, and he'd fucking do the worst sexual things in order to get back on YouTube. These places are where ideas are set. Now, the idea of getting rid of these people, sure, that's great. Yeah, that's lovely. In and of itself, in a vacuum, great. As we have seen literally every time throughout all of history, in every single way, the extreme right is the first victim, and then those laws, those actions, and those choices are led and used against the left, which pushes everything further to the right every time. You
I
can
don't think
disagree,
that's-
but I'm literally talking about all of history in every single way.
So for one, I reject historical meta narratives. Like, I don't.
It's
think
not
that-
a meta narrative. It's literally every instance we've ever had in history, wherever we've created laws, banned people, silenced people. Those tools were then used most harshly on the left. We can
What does that assume though? Like, that assumes that it is because those laws were put in place that they were able to be used against the left. But I don't believe for a second that the right wing, if given the chance, wouldn't just make those laws themselves.
Of course,
Like,
of course.
So then it's all to our benefit to
No, because you're missing the step. What you're missing is the law. It's not about the right wing. The right wing will fucking beat us with bats. They don't give a shit about the laws. The laws are built by liberals, and liberals care about the laws. The entire capitalist society obeys the laws. The laws are what set the tone of what is possible inside of any of the spaces we're in. And so if we go about and we go, hey, we're going to create a handful of really specific laws around hate speech for parades because we don't want the Klan coming around. And the places where those passed, pride banned, protest banned, straight up across the board. These things happened. There's a series of huge lawsuits that happened in the 80s literally about this. What happens with laws is, yes, we get rid of the bad actor. The bad actors want that. Osama bin Laden did what he did, so we would fucking blow up the Middle East and cause even more problems. Like the right likes this. They love this shit because it causes us to do things that changes the norms, and those norms then can be used against people on the left.
That doesn't make any sense though, because if it actually helped them, why do they make such a big deal and like stake their political platform off of not being deplatformed? Like they clearly want to share these platforms.
Brooks is making sense. He's just speaking overly generally. So we're not distinguishing between, for example, people who are making strategic moves and people who are just reacting to them blindly.
Correct.
Like we're not distinguishing between, and just to go a bit further back, we're not distinguishing between moves that interventions that are made in terms of law that do find themselves deployed against the left, and ones that simply never do and only are beneficial. The point though is, as regulations and all these things are aggregated for the party that is at a disadvantage, these represent more and more tools that can be won if they manage to somehow conventionally slip themselves into a position to manipulate them. And so it may be the case that right now, yeah, you have the total capacity to like squeeze out the bad people, but by doing so the argument runs, you've created a massive impetus for those squeezed out people to now group together, to now gain control of the apparatus or these democratic processes and all the stuff that still exists. So you have this horrible concatenation of half measures and totalitarian tools that have been flung together, so that it now becomes a game of, okay, who can now control this godlike apparatus that
So
nobody
all this
can.
tells me though,
Yeah.
all
please.
this tells me is that it's not sufficient. But I don't think
It's
that
damaging.
no.
Sure. Hang on. Serious, then Brooks. This is the debate now. Go.
I don't think it's damaging to to have these kinds of to like deplatform people. Like I don't fundamentally believe that the right wing is going to, given the position of power, sorry, it is like very late, but like let me try to formulate this in a way that's coherent. So there's two aspects to this. One is the question of are they going to be able to gain political power by staying on these platforms, like just in general? And I think the answer to that,
No, the answer is no.
I don't know how you can say that though. Like, why do you believe that them? Like, isn't this just?
I don't think it matters.
Hang on.
Place of ideas,
Serious
like,
finish, and then,
you know,
and then Brooks.
like it feels to me like I don't think that their ideas disintegrated in the light. Like I think that by
I didn't say that.
Okay, Brooks, retort.
sorry, okay.
No, please continue. Please don't mischaracterize what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
sorry.
I was very specific in saying that I was saying no to the idea that by staying on the platforms, will their audiences grow? I don't necessarily believe that's the case. And I'd have to have reasons to believe that. I have very specific reasons for that, but it wasn't about, well, we can have the discussion. It's not the liberal bullshit thing at all.
Okay.
Okay.
But I don't understand then. It seems like inconceivable to me that them being on the platform and having access to an audience is not helping them grow their audience. Because like you say that they might co-opt like these institutional rules to try and suppress like leftist dissent. Sure, but by staying on the platform, they're co-opting like other like rules of decorum that we are using.
Okay, good.
Like and
Good. Okay,
allowing them
finish that sentence. Good. Okay, now Brooks, reply.
Let's say there are three of us, and we're talking about different things. We all hate black people. We just do, just the way it is. And we're talking about it, and I use the N-word, and someone hears that, and they kick me out of wherever we are. You guys will just not use the N-word. Dog whistles are built because of the sort of nature of how these things are done, and it teaches them to become much smarter about it. and it causes them to have to spend time to be a lot more clever. It's how we get, for example, the Heritage Society, who literally grew as if out of goddamn fucking test tubes. The current justices that Trump was able to put on the Supreme Court, over the course of my entire lifetime, they've been growing justices to
Sorry.
put on the Supreme Court.
Hang on, wait.
You mean the Heritage? So you said the Heritage Society. Are you
Heritage
talking about
Foundation and the libertarian think tank. There's a lot of think tanks, all of them.
Sorry, I was just confused because like you were talking about like Supreme Court justices and like
whatever it may be. What they do across the board, these conservative movements spend time and they build narratives that are acceptable. This was the nature of the Southern strategy.
So hang on. So you see, audience, my problem here. You can't moderate these people because if you let them speak for 5 seconds, they'll speak for 20 minutes. So I'm gonna reply quickly to something that Brooke said because I thought that was interesting. So you mentioned that they now have to spend more.
If
time.
I may, I just have one point because I just want to go back to my original thing we were talking about because now we're on a tangent.
Sure, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
France instituted hate speech laws in order to protect the Jewish people. This is good in theory. I like this.
Wait, can you situate us in a specific time?
If you ever phrase a question like that again, I'm gonna just
sorry.
Go on. It's okay.
No, I want to make sure that I understand like what.
Yes.
The like 2010, I want to say ish. Like we're not talking about a long time ago. Like in the last decade.
Yeah, France instituted laws against hate speech.
Yeah, and it was specifically because people were saying kill all the Jews, and they were like, "Fuck that! We want to get rid of these guys." You can specifically find shit tons, and when I say shit tons of arrests and convictions of BDS and anti-Israeli protesters. No one who's calling for harm against Jews, at all. But straight up, it was, I want to say it just a couple years ago. France upheld a conviction of more than a dozen people who were protesting pro-Palestinian, who simply had shirts that said boycott Israel. They said that specifically violated the hate speech law. And that is how it's been turned because to your point, no one out there was like fighting for, oh, we want to get rid of the left and destroy it. But Israel, who is a fascist, hardcore right-wing state, just wanted no anti-sentiment. So they pushed these rules. They have a really, really good money program that really gets out there. And they were able to fund these in France, and then they began pushing this. It happened in France, Belgium, and now across a lot of the EU. You simply can't have BDS activities. To that end, Georgia, Texas, multiple states, you can't even do business with the government for BDS. The laws that allow that were originally instituted in order to stop Nazi activity on behalf of the government.
Okay, let's grant this. Hang on. Serious? Hang on. Yeah. So let's grant this, okay? Let's just grant this principle. Okay, so the thing, nonetheless, that these rules are being put in place to stop are by themselves harmful. They were themselves a social ill of some kind, and they had their own off effects down the line. How do you address those then? Not that it's put on you to do so. You can point out a problem without having a solution. But how do you though? Like, or do you just not?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
All right. Please state it one more time. I didn't know you were talking to me. I apologize.
Oh no, it's okay. So we don't put in place hate speech laws, right? So all of this language in its original.
Sure we do.
No. But I'm saying hypothetically. Let's say we don't. Okay. We onboard your description of events. We know this in advance. We don't put in place these hate speech laws that can then be abused by right-wing actors to silence left-wing critics, which is true. Mm-hmm. Like that's accurate. Like yes. we see people do this all the time. So Bad Empanada now gets construed as being anti-Semitic for the wrong reasons. And I don't actually know if he's anti. Yeah, but like I shouldn't say that. But like I mean, he might have done something at some point. He said weird shit before, but he talks appropriately about Israel bulldozing homes and removing Palestinians from their houses and things like that. And he gets characterized as anti-Semite for being a critic of the Israeli state, which is not Jewish people; it's a state.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So we determine that these hate speech laws are being misused, or they can be misused, or at the very least they create a new affordance in the political environment for really bad actors to take advantage of. Okay, Now, what do we do instead about the things that those hate speech laws were originally targeting? Because again, those are noxious by themselves.
I don't know why we need to do anything.
Well, among other things, they allow people to make attacks on groups of people in media very efficiently, right? Because you can now just refer to a group of people by a slur, and that bears additional content than just an insult. It categorizes the person socially. It situates the category of person socially as being dirt under the nails of society or something.
Yeah, like I don't know, the way that we talk about things.
Hang on, Sirius.
Itself.
I really want to get the response to that point, because so
the underlying realities of how a social institution works, or a large-scale social world, is there are generalized norms, and this is not something I'm saying we necessarily will get rid of. I don't even know if it's possible, but without hate speech laws, what it does is it forces that language to be where it belongs. For example, when we just had television, and we didn't have the internet as we knew it, and even when we sort of did, very early on, before the way it was currently designed, there were generally, you'd find these sort of groups, you'd find flyers, you'd find local, neo-Nazi groups or punk groups, or once upon a time skinhead wasn't actually necessarily a bad thing in the way it was now. You'd find these sort of various groups of people who had to meet in person. Now that changed things. Having to meet in person, having to be around it, that shifted why people did what they did, who they were involved with, and how. The challenge we have now, very specifically, is the internet allows this extraordinarily anonymous behavior where we can have something like 4chan, which feels, when you're on it, like it has millions of people. And if I were to say tomorrow, oh, by the way, data came out and it's like actually 700 people are on 4chan, it would completely change your view of all of it. But it feels like it's a deluge of all of that shit. The underlying problem of getting rid of it, making laws, cutting it off, and having those lines done, it does two things. First off, it changes the overall conversation by minimizing. I'm sorry, it's very late. I'm stating this a little bit poorly.
I'm going after you finish this.
By generally cutting off conversation at that point, what you do is you create a very specifically normalized allowed language, but the feelings behind it of what drives people to actually meet each other, that becomes a wider area. The language allowed is minimized, but the emotions are the same. Neo-Nazis don't go away because we don't let them say the N-word on Twitter. They're still there. This is once upon a time we were talking about guns, and I made the same comment to Nick about school shootings. It's like, sure, getting rid of guns will have a major effect, and it will probably limit school shootings. Those kids still exist. Like, are we just going to have like this, say we cured all school shootings from literally happening, but we didn't stop any of the kids from getting to the point that they would do it? Are we okay with having like a factory society that builds these kids?
We're not.
Are we okay with a factory society that builds these racists, that builds people in these situations?
No, fair enough. No, I take your point 100%, and I'll let you continue in a second. But very quickly, given the fact that in neither case the factory society is gone, I think the factory society without the school shootings is a net benefit still, no?
Yeah, it is, but not if we don't end up fixing it, because these issues metastasize. These things underneath it, the underlying problems, these things are symptoms. A racist person saying the N-word on Twitter is a symptom. It isn't the system. It is a signifier of the system. It's the thing that lets us know where people are actually
right.
at.
So we're actually all just violently in agreement, because Sirius's point was that it's not sufficient, which you agree with.
Well, yes. No, it needs to be part of a larger, multifaceted thing. But very specifically, deplatforming as a thing, I don't see the efficacy in it beyond very short-term efficacy.
I mean, I agree with that. I would challenge it on one level. And that's that, again, since these movements grow and coalesce and network and sort of condense themselves again by funneling into these spaces that can then sort of simulate like being part of a mass movement or something, and having this like echo chamber of hundreds of thousands of people, or so it feels. they still need to reach you in the first place in order to get you there. And one of the things that these measures do is they make it more difficult for them to do so. They objectively do. Like like we talk about Lawrence Southern Nick Fuentes. People have managed to stay afloat somehow, largely because they've managed to interact positively with specific figures in a strategic way. But there are a bunch of them that are just gone, and they're just totally gone. Their communities are gone.
I sent you all the studies on this. So.
We're not going over the studies tonight. I appreciate that. We'll do that sometime.
I know. No,
But-
sorry. I meant earlier, like when you were
Oh,
doing this research. Like,
But here's the thing, and again, my response is going to be the things that I've seen happen over the last 2 years. Trump has been deplatformed. People around him have been deplatformed. Sure, they're not going at Trump.
Well,
However,
hang on.
Joe Rogan just endorsed Ron DeSantis for president. So you tell me, was it a good thing that we didn't have Trump as the lightning rod for people to attach to, and now Joe Rogan, who is not a right-wing person, I hate to break it to people, he's fucked up, but he's not right. He's Ron DeSantis, the largest podcast in the goddamn world, backed Ron DeSantis. Fucking 10 years ago, Joe Rogan was like way ahead of the curve on a bunch of different left issues. Like it's insane to me. And so we see that, I tend to say the machine pushes us right. We cut off one demon. All that does is cause the energy to go elsewhere. And Ron DeSantis is a much more acceptable, smarter version of Trump. You think he has better views? He does not. He is worse than Trump. He is actively worse than Trump, but he's smarter about it. He's nicer about it. He's cool about it. And so you get people going, well, maybe I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, but that's not because Trump was deplatformed, though. I mean, Trump at no point was
but
deplatformed. Even hang on,
No, I
even
think that's the direction that things would take, regardless of his being deplatformed. Like,
I think that in itself is also a stretch. I think we just fundamentally don't know. But I think I take what you're saying, Brooks, but I think it's premised wrong. Because even in being deplatformed, Trump was boosted. Like, it's not like we're not talking about someone whose entire existence, whose entire presence is their personality in some one medium. We're talking about someone who was a presidential candidate who had a historic media presence going back decades and decades and decades, is a personality already embedded all over the place. Like, it's like you at a certain level you can't deplatform someone who is more preeminent than any of the platforms we're talking about.
yeah.
I don't think it was not really in anyone's power to deplatform him. The deplatformings that happened with respect to Trump were largely symbolic. In the case of DeSantis, however, DeSantis could be squeezed out, probably earlier on. Like
I just could not disagree more. Trump being deplatformed made him a risk and a problem for the generalized Republican power structure, and they needed to replace him because of that. That's it. Like they need that mouthpiece. They need someone to be in charge, and Trump is not it. They're actually watching Trump slowly. Like, I mean, if you're watching the January 6th thing, you're going to start seeing Republicans, my money, over the next 3-6 weeks, start turning on him. Not hard, not super hard. DeSantis is winning over a lot of his base. This is a real push.
I just don't think that you can make the causal link between his being.
I don't believe in
deplatformed.
causation. I'm saying that these things happened and then we ended up where we're at.
What? Sorry, you don't believe in.
I don't believe in causation in that sense. Like, here's one thing and here's another. I'm talking about the seriously large amount of network effects that followed on from a mass deplatforming of the right wing, a huge push by this reactionary sort of center right, and a gigantic media push by the liberal mainstream in order to kind of, find someone slightly more acceptable, and gave Ron DeSantis a ton of airtime. Like, there's a lot of things that sort of go into that. It's not a one thing. If I said this happened, then this, it's like, no. But the deplatforming of all of these right-wing figures and these pushes, these things have network effects. People have a need to invest into just different things that they're able to see. The way that people like shows, they like politicians, they follow them, they invest in them, they get involved. And when that energy has nowhere else to go, they find somewhere else. And Ron DeSantis was more than happy to slide in.
But you'll notice at the beginning of
Wait.
that.
Can
No.
I
No. Hang on
need
1
to
second.
go.
At
Like,
the
I am.
Shh.
Sorry?
I will let you. But you will wait 1 moment. At the beginning of your tale, Brooks, though, you said they get. How do they get? If they're gone, if they've been algorithmically picked up and removed from Go because red flags have been set off, then there is no getting, is there? I mean, that's how that works. The reason why we can have these kinds of mass scale political
right, but again, my point is, yes, you've deplatformed Trump. My point is that Trump is not a thing. We'll get into some fucking ontology here, my friend. The essence of what Trump is, or anyone is in that position, is they are symbols and social things that people invest in. Trump doesn't matter. Trump doesn't matter to anyone but fucking maybe even Trump himself. I'm not even sure if he even understands who he is.
I agree, but
he's not a real person of the left.
Yeah.
He's not a person of the right. He was a lightning rod people could invest their different feelings into on both the liberal side, the right side, and on the left side. And his movement out, that doesn't mean that position socially isn't needing to be filled. It just means Trump was removed and they needed to find another symbol. But they did. And just to mention, the Republicans have been very successful during Joe Biden's political career. Like, the last 2 years has been the best years for the Republicans that have ever happened. And they're going to be for the next year and a half too. So they have other things to invest in. Ron DeSantis is pulling up, and it doesn't have to be just Trump. But this is my underlying issue with, like, the criticism of Destiny as being a person and platforming Nick Fuentes as a person. That the way that people deal with personalities and politics is not even really with that thing or that person. They're invested in the generalized flows of what that person is, what they're able to invest in, the network effects around that person, that any single sort of emergent reality that I experience as a subjective being is able to cognize as what that person is to me. Destiny's audience does the same thing. They jump in parasocially, just like most audiences jump in parasocially, but they're not like there for Destiny. I mean, and he knows this. I'm sure he's talked about this. I know Vosh.
Well, they'll talk endlessly about how their own audiences criticize them all the time. So.
Yeah, they know the situation with this.
You'll get to jump in a second, serious. Sorry, keep going.
All of this is not about any single person being deplatformed. That, sure, there's like a temporary hold there. I'm very against a generalized offloading of laws into the private sector and into capital that dictates language. I have a big issue with that. Hate speech laws I don't necessarily have the same problem with even, but having capital dictate is horrifying. All of that aside,
I agree with that, yeah.
The removal of people and the normalization of what is allowed inside of it as a thing, yeah, sure, does something, maybe. We've got a lot of other work to do. And to me, that's one of the most useless fucking things that there is, because the people who backed Trump, the people who charged in on January 6th, and the completely ineffective shit left, ban Trump, ban literally everyone. Who the fuck is how is any of that going to change? It doesn't change what I just described at all.
I think the logic is that the spaces that people go into to get educated and where they socialize the most, at the lowest common denominator, those things will not be present there, and so generationally they will be squeezed out, which is true. That's more or less what happens. Sorry, I'm not trying to say that to just get one on you, but Sirius has been waiting very patiently. You had something you wanted to say?
Oh, I
Please don't
what
tell
I
me you
wanted
forgot
to
it.
say
Okay, good.
is that what I wanted to say is that Brooks, you are very, very smart, and you have a lot of things that I don't want to address right now because I'm too tired and I would like to go. I am going to leave. That's all I wanted to say. Is that
Excellent. It's good
it
to
is
hang
time
out, though.
for me to leave.
All right, have a good night, Sirius. I'm sorry for making you wait that long.
Yeah, I'll table my objections till another time. But you guys have fun with the rest of the stream. Thank you for having me on Sunday. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
You're welcome back anytime. Have a good night, Sirius.
All right, see ya.
All right. See, Brooks, you scared away my other guest. What am I going to do with you?
A lot.
All right. Well, long story short, this manifesto sucks.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I think that's fair, and it's not even worth going over the Vosh shit.
Yeah, it's not. It's also stuff we all know. Like we all know all about this.
I found it sad. I mean, I hope that came through. Like, I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, some of it I was just shitting on him because I don't like some of the language he uses, and I find it gross. But like, I found the whole thing just very sad.
So here's my take on this, okay? Like, I agree with you on that, or at least that's my tendency. The problem is, as this is my arena, to the extent that it is, if I take that position, and I don't punch up, but instead I guess like I bandage up, I'm arresting any capacity to make any intervention at any level, and it's going to do absolutely nothing to alter what he does. And like, of course, as you say, like it's functionally impossible for someone of my scale, or someone 10 times my scale, or 100 times my scale even, to alter his course. But you can nonetheless create pressures that maybe down the line will alter the course of whoever follows him, or follows from him. Now that is of course
that
like
presumes we're able to change the course.
Well,
I don't see.
It presumes that I don't know that we can't, and I think that's true. Like, it's a gamble, of course, but I wouldn't err on the side of absolute pessimism either. You know, like we just don't know, and my worry is that sometimes when we take that stance, and like we can be absolutely correct in like saying like, look, there are these myriad cross pressures. But if our attention is so focused on the system that we lose sight of potential nodes of actual intervention, like, yeah, of course, we're conditioned by the system ourselves. Like, at a certain point, everything is determined. Like, there's no point that we can identify at which, like, some sort of, like, magical will sort of originates from some one point in ourselves, and therefore we can just, like, strain hard enough and just change the world. But there are nonetheless, like, little crystallizations where we appear to have decisions, and we appear to be able to, like, push stuff in like a set number of directions, and to the extent that we can do that, I don't think it necessarily makes sense to just be like so in awe of like the flows of everything, even if that's true, that it arrests us from those. Like, I think we can sort of do both. We can make those interventions and sort of hope that they work, like a kind of pragmatic optimism, and then take a step back afterwards and recognize that like at a certain level, like there is no real like actually changing action that you can take in your limited capacity as a single individual. Because again, your condition, their condition, all of this stuff, there are so many little flows as origins points and endpoints you have no notion of. You get what I'm saying? Like I take your point 100% and I agree with it, but I also think at the same time, like I think Nietzsche was sort of right. Like, untruth at a certain level is sort of a condition of life as well, and I'm not dead yet.
I don't think I'm going to disagree with any of that. Again, this is the reason I get pissy when people talk about deplatforming. The reason I get pissy when people say, well, why doesn't Destiny just do X, Y, or Z, or streamer X do this, or political actor do Y? And it's just like, the whole idea, for me, as far as I get it, of being remotely on the left, or being maybe psychotically, maybe neurotically in my case, is that it's about understanding the larger system and the universality of human experience, and not differentiating and otherizing people. It's to me like at a base level, like that precludes the idea of demanding that people make a choice that seems to be completely out of character for them. It precludes the idea that we would be able to just excise a handful of people and fix things. We have large-scale systemic problems we need to find solutions for.
Yeah.
Do these things. I don't care. Do gun control. I don't give a fuck. Like, whatever. The gun control won't be forever. Probably.
I'll meet you here, okay?
Whatever.
Even pragmatically, like, I think the fixation on deplatforming is insane, because that's actually like, that's now being treated as the end, when literally all it is, to be clear, like, let's suffer no illusions here. When we're talking about deplatforming from Twitch, we are talking about Amazon squeezing people out because it's bad for ad revenue. That's literally it. We're not talking about like a concerted political effort to get rid of bad actors. We're talking about the company started by Jeff Bezos, which is one of the most exploitative companies in the Western world.
Yeah.
Pushing out.
But there's a reason. But there's a reason. Even in that case, there's a reason. Deleuze and Marx and others have called people like Bezos, like these others, capitalist eunuchs, because they are. Well, it seems like, and yeah, sure, they don't have the same worries that other people do. They exist as a cog in the system in ways that it's very difficult to sort of even comprehend. And as you've made yourself part of the system, as you've built it and you believed in it and been rewarded by it, you sit there and, you know, I don't like the system. I've been in a different place. Looking at that and making that judgment and saying to someone how awful it is, they don't make the immediate switch, when all of us have in some aspect of our lives shit we wish we could change, or we've been told we could. I just find it like, why do we make exceptions for these people? I mean, get it, they're bastards, but like, being a bastard doesn't mean that you aren't still a human. Like, we've got work to do. It's systemic.
Yeah,
Sitting and
agree with
condemning
that.
people and othering people and all of that only serves the fascists.
Well, the Entmoot has concluded, and we have determined, Destiny, that you are in fact human. So, on that note, you've got a retreat to prepare for, and it's 2:44 in the morning.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to get sicker at this rate. So, it's been a pleasure as always. Have a good trip. I hope that goes well.
It'll be nice.
How far are you going?
About an hour south of Portland, remote, trying to get away from things.
You can let me know if it's burning or not.
Hopefully not this year. We could do without those fires again for sure.
Oh God, I hope so for here as well. I don't have asthma apparently, but I've got something, and it's like trying to breathe Lysol. It's not pleasant. All right. Well, on that note, have a good night and have a good trip, and thank you as well to Sirius, who just left, and thanks to the audience for being up till 2:45 in the morning and proving that we're doomed, because apparently the only thing we have the willpower to do is to sit around in a circle and discuss a StarCraft gamer's dating relationship.
We are
with,
hardly doomed, and I know it sounds like I go hard doomer. We are hardly doomed. Quite literally the opposite. It's just a matter of understanding where the power exists for change, and it is not in this really weird space we give of the sort of Cartesian subject and the ego.
So you say hardly doomed, but I only hear that in my ears is when Miracle Max in Princess Bride characterizes Wesley as being only mostly dead. So, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. But all right. Have a good night. Ciao.
Enjoy.